Chapter 607. Zhang Feng didn't know what happened in Chang'an City. In 3 days, Ma Zhou's house was finally built under Zhang Feng's deliberate arrangement. It was a 2-story little red house. At the bottom of the house, there was something that looked like a lattice. The lattice was not big, only about 10 square feet. The fences of each lattice only reached the height of a person's chest. Inside there was a water trough, a food trough, and a door. However, there were dozens of such things. It could be seen how big Ma Zhou's house was under Zhang Feng's deliberate arrangement. The second floor was for living. Ma Zhou knew that one was for sleeping. After all, there was a bamboo straw bed in it. The other room was similar to a study, but there was nothing in it except a table and stool made of bamboo and a bookshelf. Oh, there was also an oil lamp. However, there were only 2 rooms with a study. The other 9 rooms only had 1 bed. That was all. Zheng Tufu and his son and daughter-in-law happily became his neighbors. In the other room lived a man who made Ma Zhou's hair stand on end. It was said that he was an old eunuch from the palace. When he was in the palace, he was a big shot. His main job was to clean people's bodies. Ma Zhou always felt a little creepy when such a man lived next door. Of course, the house that the eunuch lived in was much better than Ma Zhou's. After all, his house was the largest and best house except for Zheng Tufu's house. Behind the house, one could see a waterfall in the depths of the Shao Mountain. It was enough to prove that this man's importance was incomparable to Ma Zhou and Zheng Tufu. Ma Zhou didn't understand this arrangement. But it was a great honor to have a house here. After all, except for the teacher Zhang Feng and the others, everyone here was still living in shacks made of twigs and sheepskin. Every time someone passed by, they would comment on this house and show envious eyes. However, Ma Zhou always felt that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he didn't know for the time being, but he always felt that something was wrong. At this moment, just as Ma Zhou placed his few books on the bookshelf and covered his bed with a layer of dried straw, Zhang Feng walked into Ma Zhou's room with a blanket in his arms under the envious gazes of Zheng Tufu and his family. Seeing this, Ma Zhou hurriedly stood up and bowed. Student Ma Zhou pays respect to teacher. Ma Zhou, are you satisfied with this house? Time was tight, so I didn't have time to paint it. Once Li Gan is done with his work, I'll personally ask him to bring someone to paint it for you. Then I'll add some furniture for you. That's how a house should look like. But now the conditions on the mountain are limited, so you have to bear with it for a while. When Ma Zhou heard this, he instantly teared up. Thank you, teacher, for your kindness. What virtue and ability does Ma Zhou have to deserve such kindness from teacher? Ma Zhou is really terrified. Haha, it's fine, it's fine. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands. Since you're free, I have something to tell you. Zhang Feng pointed to the floor and said, do you know what's under here? Ma Zhou shook his head in puzzlement. The architecture here was simply inconceivable. How would he know what those circles below were? Although he had a rough idea that this was not a place for humans to live in, he had no idea what it was used for. He hurriedly bowed and said, I'm willing to listen to teacher's teachings. Zhang Feng was speechless. But what he liked about Ma Zhou was his vigor. It was more convenient to use him like this. When they arrived at Shao Mountain, Zhang Feng had basically prepared everything that he could think of for Ma Zhou. This made Li Qingqian and the others jealous. But Zhang Feng only said one sentence. They could either have the house as a gift, but there was a condition, and that was that they had to rear pigs. When they heard this, each of them ran away faster than the other. They did not even dare to look at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng gathered his thoughts and looked at Ma Zhou up and down. Then he said, I heard that you've been in Chang'an for 5 years? Why didn't you participate in the last imperial examination? Ma Zhou's eyes darkened when he heard this, but he did not dare to not answer. He said, Teacher, you need to send your name to the imperial examination. Before I met teacher, I sent my name to all the places in Chang, and that I could send my name to, but I heard that you raised horses? Zhang Feng did not want to listen to his long-winded words and asked directly. Zhang Feng already knew about this. Ma Zhou's face turned pale when he heard this. He said helplessly, Yes, I did. It was all for my livelihood and to buy a book. I had no choice but to do this. Good, very good. Raising horses is good. Ma Zhou's expression froze. Raising horses is good? How is it good? If it was not for the handwritten authentic work of the former great scholar Qin, would he lower himself to feed horses? This was a humiliation to the literati. He did not understand what Zhang Feng wanted to say. What was the connection between this and the small enclosure below? He could only bow and wait quietly. When Zhang Feng saw this, he patted Ma Zhou's shoulder and said, When I saw you for the first time, I knew that you and I were fated to meet. So now, I have an important matter that I want to entrust to you. Are you willing to do it? Chapter 608. Ma Zhou's heart tightened. His eyes reddened involuntarily. Who was he? To put it bluntly, he was just a down-and-out scholar. If he hadn't met Zhang Feng, he might have starved to death in this famine. What did he do to deserve Zhang Feng's favor? Was this the blessing of the ancestors? It must be. Ma Zhou hurriedly wanted to kneel, but Zhang Feng's cough woke him up. He didn't know whether to kneel or not. He was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. Seeing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but smile. You don't have to do this. Although we are now teacher and student, if you don't want to, I won't force you. Teacher, please rest assured. No matter what, I'm indebted to you for accepting me as your disciple. I will go through fire and water to repay you. Good. I'm relieved to hear your words. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands and narrowed his eyes into slits. He pulled Ma Zhou to sit on the bed beside him and said, "Let me tell you something first. What does the Tang dynasty need the most now? Food." Ma Zhou didn't even think about it. Zhang Feng asked again. Then why do we study? What? Ma Zhou couldn't help but be silent for a moment before he said, if it were before, it would be to pass the imperial examinations and enter the official career to serve the Tang dynasty. What about now? Zhang Feng asked again. Ma Zhou was silent for a while before he said, to save the people from water and fire. Now the Tang dynasty has experienced countless disasters since the founding of the country. Now we are facing drought, locusts and famine again. Although the wise emperor of the Tang dynasty has set up the cooperative that is beneficial to the people, and you have also made beer. You took the wheat that sprouted from the poor people. In the eyes of others, you may be the kind of bodhisattva who saves people from suffering, but more people say you are a prodigal. But I think if everyone in the world could be like you, there wouldn't be disasters in the world. Zhang Feng was delighted to hear that, although he really didn't want to listen to flattery. However, he still felt extremely comfortable when Ma Zhou flattered him. Zhang Feng signaled Ma Zhou to continue. Ma Zhou then said, actually, all of this was foreseeable. While everyone was working behind closed doors, the teacher put in 20,000 don of grain to suppress the price of grain. This forced the imperial court to lower the price of grain. What is this? This is carelessness. This is also what we need. But in the Tang dynasty, basically, out of 10 people, 10 of them are rough men who can't read big words. What's this? This was a crisis. If a country can't even popularize the most basic things, it's extremely dangerous. This is also why I thought about it for 3 days after I saw the imperial edict. Why did the teacher do such an unprecedented thing? Free. Confucius once said in his book that one should not receive a reward for nothing, let alone knowledge. This is what I've been most confused about recently. Although I have a general idea after reading the contents of the imperial edict and seeing what happened on the mountain in the past few days. Zhang Feng interrupted Ma Zhou and asked, you are right. Although my academy doesn't charge money, it is a little. However, I have a condition. Do you understand now? Ma Zhou nodded. This is also why I admire you the most. You use labor to replace labor. Although we don't charge money, we use another method to make up for it. However, this is only useful in the beginning. If we wait until Mount E is built, then this method will be. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said with a smile, you are very good. There are not many people who can think of this now. Even Chintinyu and the others pestered me for several days because of this. I didn't expect you to be enlightened. In fact, this is also our task. You're right. How can we free these poor commoners from their poverty? On one hand, we need the government to be benevolent. On the other hand, we need people like us to perfect it and then give it back to the commoners. This is also what Confucius taught us. I once saw a sentence in an ancient book. It is better to teach people to fish than to give them fish. This is my original intention of establishing this academy. Do you understand now? Ma Zhou could not help but be shocked. Although he couldn't figure out where this sentence came from no matter how hard he racked his brain, the impact this sentence had on him, and what Zhang Feng was doing now really opened a door to him that he had never touched before. Ma Zhou could not help but tidy up his clothes and bow respectfully. I understand. Zhang Feng saw that the time was ripe and said, so, I will tell you one more thing. Teacher, please speak. I intend to hand over the matter of rearing pigs to you. They are the economic pillar of White Deer College. Are you willing to take over this heavy responsibility? Ma Zhou was dumbfounded. After talking so much, all she wanted was for him to raise pigs? At this moment, Zhang Feng added, don't worry. Every one of them who wants to study here will have a different task. This task will ultimately affect your academic credits. However, I can guarantee that after 3 years, no matter what, I will recommend you to the Ministry of Administration. Are you willing? What could Ma Zhou say? He could only bow hurriedly. I will listen to teacher's instructions. Chapter 609. Zhang Feng was in a good mood when he saw that the matter was settled. He patted the disappointed Ma Zhou and said, Ma Zhou, do a good job. I can guarantee that if I, Zhang Feng, can't teach you to become a jinshi in the imperial examination 3 years later, I, Zhang Feng, will present my head to you. Ma Zhou was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly said, as a teacher you can't do this. It's already a great honor to be able to study in the academy. As a teacher, please don't do this. Otherwise, Ma Zhou will only feel ashamed to face you. Zhang Feng knew that Ma Zhou would feel aggrieved in his heart. This would directly affect the growth of these pigs. He then said carefully, I know that you must think that raising pigs is such a lowly and shameful thing. How can a Confucian student be entrusted with such a lowly and shameful thing? You're wrong. If it's an ordinary pig, I naturally won't let any of you touch it. Even if you want to raise it, I will drive you out. But this is different. The porridge that you eat every day has this pork in it. Let me ask you, how many people can afford to eat mutton now? This pork is basically the main source of income for the people. However, this ordinary pig can only reach a weight of about 50 kilograms after a year. Moreover, it is extremely thin. However, I have found a way to make this pig grow to 200 kilograms within 3 months. Moreover, it doesn't have a foul or fishy smell. Not only that, I also want to use this pork to replace the realgar powder in the porridge. When the time comes, it will be able to enter the elegant hall and become the emperor's breakfast. The reason why I didn't ask others is that I'm worried. You're very careful. You are meticulous and you are a scholar. You know what these animals need to eat and so on. These are all knowledge. If there is a little problem with one of them, it will affect the taste of the pork. That is why I asked you to come. Do you understand my difficulties? I'm doing this for the welfare of the people in the world. I'm making an excellent breakfast for the emperor. Finally, Ma Zhou was shocked by Zhang Feng's persuasion. He couldn't help but ask in a trembling voice, 3 months? 200 caddies? And it doesn't have a foul or fishy smell? This is something prepared for the emperor? For the welfare of the people in the world? Yes. Zhang Feng continued to tempt him. Think about it. Isn't this what the sages said? Bow your head and be willing to be an ox, frown and be pointed at by thousands of people? Zhang Feng's famous sentence erupted once again. He didn't care if Ma Zhou could understand him or not. In any case, he just said whatever he wanted to say. The flesh on Ma Zhou's face trembled as he spoke. He was abnormally excited. What is this? This was a teacher imparting moral principles. This was something that could never be learned from books, poems, etiquette, or the book of songs. But now, Zhang Feng was also pretending to be impressive. As for the purpose, let's not talk about it then. It was all to trick Ma Zhou and let him raise pigs for him with peace of mind. After all, he had been craving this thing for more than a day or two. After that, Zhang Feng took Ma Zhou and the old Xiaocai and knocked on the old eunuch's door. The old eunuch was from the palace and was called Eunuch Gao. However, her common name surprised Zhang Feng. His name was Gao Jingyi. Eunuch Gao. Gao Jingyi opened the door and was somewhat displeased. Old man. Old man already said that you can call me Old Gao or Old Gao. You brat, what are you trying to do? Eunuchs who left the palace were generally not allowed to use the name of the palace, nor could they use the word eunuch. After all, it was a disgrace to the royal family. Moreover, Gao Jingyi was also flustered. He was originally cleaning people in the palace, but after he left the palace he became involved in the business of raising pigs. Although they were all Taoists, it was still somewhat embarrassing. At this moment, Zhang Feng scratched his head embarrassedly. He didn't mind at all. His skin was as thick as the city wall. Well, I found a few helpers for you today. This is Ma Zhou, my brother. He has experience in raising. Well, this is Zheng Tufu and his son Zheng. Ahem, I'm Zheng Fengxian. Zheng Tufu's son knew how powerful this master was. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't know his name, he hurriedly added, Today I was thinking that since you all live in the same building, you should basically take care of each other in these matters in the future. Old Gao, I'll leave this matter to you. As for what you want, you just need to tell Ma Zhou. Old Gao pursed his lips. He glanced at Ma Zhou, who was as thin as a monkey, and then at Zheng Tufu and Zheng Tufu, who were as strong as iron towers. His gaze involuntarily fell on the three's crotch, and the three couldn't help but turn pale. Old Gao pursed his lips. I'm used to it. Well, since we're all working for Prince Zhang, let's start the knife test today? When Zhang Feng heard that, he hurriedly winked at Zheng Tufu. Old Zheng, what are you waiting for? Old Gao is going to accept disciples. What are you waiting for? Zheng Tufu was stunned for a while, then he hurriedly slapped the back of Zheng Fengxian's head and roared, "Brat, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?" Zheng Fengxian was a little dumbfounded. What was there to learn about blacksmithing? It was not as satisfying as a butcher's knife. Chapter 610. After solving the problem of the pig, Zhang Feng encountered another big problem. At present, the situation on the mountain was basically stable. As for the teaching building, Zhang Feng had basically confirmed that it was a 3-story building. There was no other way. This grandson was too sneaky. Now he even had an old eunuch from the palace who specialized in cleaning people on the mountain. Who could resist him? If this grandson was forced into a corner, he would stab you when you fell asleep. Therefore, under normal circumstances when people saw Zhang Feng, they basically felt cold and insecure. There was no other way. Who knew if this grandson would do something bad to you? Although it was not very likely, they did not dare to make any guarantees. At this moment, these guys were squatting on the high platform at the gate of the mountain, looking down the mountain in a daze. Zhang Feng happened to pass by at this moment. He was going to check on the situation of the food storage in the past few days and look for Sun Simya to study a kind of hay. However, from afar he saw these guys slacking off and couldn't help but be angry. He shouted a few times but these guys didn't respond at all. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel puzzled. He climbed up the sentry post made of 3 intersecting logs. Even when he sat down, these guys didn't notice him. "What are you looking at?" Zhang Feng couldn't help but be very interested. Following their gazes, Zhang Feng couldn't see a single person at the foot of the mountain. He couldn't help but feel more confused. When Zhang Feng's voice rang out, it instantly gave everyone a fright. Ching Chumo, who was sitting on the edge, almost fell down. F***ck Feng Z, you mother f***ker, say something. You'll scare me to death, do you understand? Zhang Feng spread his hands speechlessly. I've already shouted until my voice is hoarse, but you didn't hear me. Who's to blame? But what are you doing? Wei Shuyu, Li Qingqian, Zhang Sun, Chong, and Ching Chumo couldn't help but sigh when they heard this. Sigh. You've been circling around that horse all day. Haven't you noticed that there are no more people going up the mountain today? Zhang Feng was stunned. Isn't it good that no one is around? This meant that the famine was under control. Wasn't that a good thing? I say you guys are cheap. When there are more people, you complain. When there's no one left, you guys. No. What we mean is that there is no news at all. This imperial edict should have been known by all the people of the Tang dynasty. Logically speaking, at least a few people should have come. But how long has it been? It's already July and there's not a single person here. This isn't normal. The few of them spoke. Zhang Feng finally knew what these guys were worried about. He couldn't help but fall silent. Looking at the empty mountain path, he could not help but make up his mind. Isn't it just people? Including the few of you, there are already 60 people on this mountain. What are you afraid of? Let's not talk about 60 people. Even if there is only one person, I've said before that my academy will continue to set up this place. Zhang Feng also found it strange. The imperial edict had been issued for more than half a month, but there was not a single person. No, there was only Ma Zhou. This was not normal. Since Ma Zhou was here, it meant that the people of Chang and city knew about it. What about how Chu Jun and the others recorded in history? Where did they go? Moreover, not to mention Chang and city, it had been almost 20 days. Even if the person who delivered the imperial edict had crawled, he should have reached the place by now, right? Could it be that these people were all on the way? Zhang Feng shook his head. Who cares? If they're not here, then they're not here. Lao Tzu did not care. By the way, the situation on this mountain has basically stabilized. Li Gan, you have a lot of connections. Go to the city and find me dozens of top carpenters. I've already found carpenters. Look at these beams. These are all carpenters. I'm talking about carpenters who do delicate work. At the very least, carpenters who make carved fans and the like? Li Qingqian was stunned. He looked at Zhang Feng and asked, What? You want to make fans? Get lost. Zhang Feng said angrily, It seems that the academy will basically take shape in a month. Moreover, this person has nothing to do. There will always be problems. I'm thinking of ordering a batch of teaching aides. But I'm still worried about this person, so I want you to find a few people who know him well and bring him to the mountain. It's best if they can stay on the mountain. Li Qingqian and the other 3 people were a little confused. What kind of teaching aides do you need such a craftsman? Such craftsmen are rare in Chang'an City. But there are some, but it's not easy to find them. But what exactly are you going to do? Zhang Feng was too lazy to explain. He showed them the triangular board, compass and other figures on a drawing in his arms. The few of them stared at each other, unable to understand what was going on. In the end, Zhang Feng said lightly, "Didn't you think that mathematics is nothing? Didn't you show off that you've learned it? Then let me ask you, what is the length of 30, the width of 20, and the height of 10? This is all knowledge. This is all mathematics. How much do you think you've learned? Come, I'll give you 3 days to calculate this question. If you've calculated it correctly, you can do whatever you want until the academy opens. How about it?" Li Qingqian and Du Go looked at each other. Then Li Qingqian asked solemnly, "Feng, is this also mathematics?" "What else? This is real mathematics. Great knowledge." Li Qingqian took a deep breath. He solemnly folded the drawing and put it in his arms. "I'll go find a carpenter now." Chapter 6:11. The reason why Li Qingqian left in a hurry without asking any questions was because he suddenly realized that the teaching tools Zhang Feng was going to make this time were the real skills he wanted to impart to them. Even the multiplication table and division table that he had mentioned before, what were those? Li Qingqian's intuition told him that it was a calculation method about the area. However, he was speechless when he was asked such a simple question. What kind of calculation method was this? In the past, when they calculated this kind of thing, they basically used steps and prints. But now, Li Qingqian's intuition told him that this thing, which he had never seen before, was a good thing. Although he didn't know what Zhang Feng was going to do this time, he still had to prepare these things. After all, although there might not be anyone coming, what if someone came? As soon as he went down the mountain, Li Qingqian hurried to the Ministry of Works. The Ministry of Works was a place where all kinds of strange and obscene skills were gathered. Basically, everyone who could enter the Ministry of Works was the best in the Tang dynasty. The Ministry of Works was undoubtedly the place to find such skilled people. However, before Li Qingqian entered Chang and city on a fast horse, he was suddenly shocked by what he saw in front of him. At the city gate, countless people were rushing out of the city. Those people looked as if something terrible had happened in the city and wanted to escape. Li Qingqian had never seen such a scene. Even when the Turks were about to enter the Wei River, the people of Chang and city didn't look like this. What was going on? However, Li Qingqian made way for the public road. After careful observation, he found that these people had one thing in common. They were young. Most of them were young. Some of them were wearing shabby clothes and some were wearing luxurious clothes. Li Qingqian even picked up a few stubborn people who used to wander around Chang and city under the alias of Li Qingqian. Li Qingqian couldn't help but stop them and ask, "Where are you going?" Those stubborn people turned out to be Li Qingqian. They were a little surprised. "Brother Li, aren't you at Chang and University? Why are you out of the city?" Li Qingqian couldn't be bothered to explain. He pointed at the crowd and asked, "What are these people going to do? What happened in Chang'an City? What happened?" They looked at each other and said in surprise, "You don't know about this?" Li Qingqian was also anxious. "What do I know?" "You really don't know?" They were even more surprised. Basically, everyone in Chang and city who could understand human language knew about this matter. How could this guy not know about it? Were they still the former 4 great demon kings? Holy shit. What was going on? Strange expressions appeared on their faces. One of the youths came to Li Qingqian's side and whispered into his ear, "Are you sure you don't know?" Li Qingqian was also anxious. "If I knew, would I need to ask you?" Seeing this, they said, "Are you sure you don't know about White Deer College?" Wong. A buzzing sound rang out in Li Qingqian's mind. Could it be, are these people going to White Deer College? *CK. Then, Li Qingqian could not help but be shocked. Looking at the thousands of people rushing out of the city with weapons in their hands, the hair on his body stood on end. "Oh no!" Li Qingqian screamed. He even forgot about the matter of going to Chang'an City. He got on his horse and rushed to Mount Han, leaving behind a few stubborn people who looked at each other. *CK. What's wrong with young Master Li? Did he take the wrong medicine? No, I think he's going to Mount Shao. Look, he's just about to enter the city. Could it be? They could not help but look at each other again. At the same time, a sentence flashed in their minds. This guy had already gone to White Deer College. On the other side, Li Qingqian was shocked. He had always thought that Zhang Feng's college was too outrageous. He had read the sage's book, and it was very clear that one should not take a book for free. However, Zhang Feng did the opposite. Not only did he not want money, but he even wanted to arrange for him to enter an important department in the palace. Although Li Qingqian and the others thought that Zhang Feng's actions were outrageous, they could understand it. However, how could ordinary people accept it? But now, It was not that they could not accept such a college, but they wanted to come together. Li Qingqian waved his whip as if his life depended on it. He hated the fact that the horse was too slow. If only it had a pair of wings. That way he would be able to see Zhang Feng's shocked face earlier. Giddy up! Giddy up! Giddy up! Li Qingqian waved his whip and rushed to White Deer College. Along the way, Li Qingqian ignored all the greetings of the people who were transporting materials to and fro. The onlookers were baffled by this scene. Before reaching the gate, Li Qingqian saw Zhang Feng and the others standing on the sentry post. He waved his white robe and shouted, "Feng Zi, something happened. Something big happened in Chang'an." Chapter 6:12. Zhang Feng, who was arguing with Cheng Chumo and the others about the importance of cement, wondered if he was playing the lute to a cow. And at this moment, Li Qingqian's voice at the foot of the mountain saved his life. How could you explain this to a few uncouth men and a monk? This was King Fatal. Li Qingqian was simply a great savior. Before Zhang Feng could thank Li Qingqian silently in his heart, his next sentence scared Zhang Feng so much that his legs went soft. The few of them were basically in the same situation. They anxiously leaned on the railing of the sentry post and looked at Li Qingqian at the foot of the mountain in the distance. They shouted, "What happened?" However, the distance was too far, and Zhang Feng's lung capacity was not enough. Once he shouted, he felt suffocated and dizzy. Zhang Feng hurriedly grabbed Cheng Chumo. "Tainyo, shout. Ask what happened. What happened?" Zhang Feng was not worried about anything else. He was only worried about his small pub and the brewery, especially the basement that he dug. It was filled with money that he had saved up. There was also a book of 300 poems of the Tang dynasty that he had prepared to write to show off. If that place was destroyed by thieves, he would lose a lot of money. That was what he had prepared to present to the emperor when he entered the imperial court. He would use it to show off. The other one was the winery next to the tavern. Now that most of the workers in Tonghui Fang had left, the workers there had been replaced by old Li's men. Although the sprouted wheat stored in the winery had been dried and stored to be used for brewing wine, it was still edible at a time like this where diseases were everywhere. If someone who was starving went to get it for him, that was basically the same as cutting off his only source of income. Seeing Zhang Feng begging, Cheng Chumo finally cleared his throat and shouted, "Young Master Li, Fengzi asked you what happened. Is there something wrong with the tavern?" This voice exploded like muffled thunder, instantly causing Li Qingqian's warhorse to tremble. Only then did Li Qingqian roar, "No, nothing happened to the tavern." Amidst the wind and the rustling of the tree trunks, that was all the crowd heard. "It's gone. The tavern is gone. Something happened." When Zhang Feng heard this, he only felt his head sink and was about to fall head first. "It's over. It's all over. I don't want to live anymore. It's Lao Tzu's money. Lao Tzu's poetry collection." Fortunately, Wei Shuyu and the others were skilled. Seeing that Zhang Feng was about to fall, they hurriedly pulled him back. At this time, everyone at the mountain gate also heard this sentence. Old He and the others could not help but explode. "What? Did you hear that, neighbors? Feng Zi's tavern is gone. Workers of Tonghui Lane, get your weapons and go down the mountain. Let's see who has the guts to touch Feng Zi's tavern. Go, go, go. Feng Zi, don't take it too hard. We'll avenge you right now. Go, 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 avenge Feng Zi. Feng Zi's tavern is in trouble." At this time, as this matter spread around the mountain gate, everyone was also talking about it. Unwittingly, as the rumor spread, the atmosphere changed. Feng Zi is in trouble. Feng Zi is gone. Feng Zi is in trouble. Quick, go to the mountain gate. Someone is fighting their way up the mountain. Feng Zi is in trouble. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. What happened to Feng Zi? However, in the next moment, the people who were working at the construction site were furious. If it were not for Zhang Feng, how would they be able to eat their fill? If it were not for Zhang Feng, they would have starved to death. If it were not for Zhang Feng, how would their son have the chance to enter the school? If it were not for Zhang Feng, how would they be able to find a way to survive in this year of disaster? But damn it, someone dared to cause trouble? Brothers, Feng Zi has given away his entire family fortune for us. Now someone wants to kill Feng Zi. What is this? This is destroying our way of survival. I can't stand it. Let's go kill him. No matter who it is, if he dares to touch Feng Zi, he will be my enemy for life. Let's go, let's beat him to death. At this moment, at the back of the mountain, which was the pig farm in the call of Shao Mountain, Zheng Tufu and his son, as well as Ma Zhou, were squatting on the ground, watching the old eunuch Old Gao sharpen a strangely shaped knife while explaining the techniques of pig slaughtering. At this moment, the dog suddenly rushed over. Oh no, something happened. Brother Feng Zi is in trouble. The few of them heard that. They were instantly shocked. What's going on? Dog, what happened to Feng Zi? The few of them hurriedly asked. Zheng Tufu picked up the butcher's knife and rushed to the dog. He shouted angrily, "What happened to Feng Zi? Give me a clear explanation." The dog was also scared out of his wits. He hurriedly said in a trembling voice, "I just heard at the construction site that something happened to Feng Zi at the entrance of the mountain. I heard that he was..." "What?" Zheng Tufu was shocked when he heard that. Damn it, who dares to touch Feng Zi? Lao Tzu will not let him off." While shouting, Zheng Tufu hurriedly rushed out of the mountain gate with the butcher's knife. Old Gao, Ma Zhou and Zheng Tufu's son looked at each other and hurriedly followed. Chapter 6:13. Mount Tai was not big. However, the news spread very quickly. As time passed, everyone knew one thing. Zhang Feng was killed. How could that be? Who the hell dared to cut off their livelihood? If it wasn't for Zhang Feng opening up the food supply, most of the people here would probably starve to death or become beggars by the city gate. However, since Zhang Feng suppressed the food price, not only could they fill their stomachs, but they also had meat to eat for every meal. They also had jobs. If they did well, they could even earn a little money. Although the money was not much, at least it could get them through this disaster year. However, who had the guts to touch Zhang Feng now? Therefore, regardless of whether it was a 65-year-old man or a 12-year-old child, the stones on the mountain were free anyway. They grabbed 2 smooth pebbles and rushed to the mountain gate angrily. Kill? Avenge Zhang Feng. Who dares to make trouble on the mountain? Kill him. Cheng Chumo and the others who were at the mountain gate were dumbfounded when they heard that. He patted Zhang Feng, who was also dumbfounded, and said, "Feng Zi, what's going on? Why are these people shouting to avenge you?" Who knows? Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. Looking at the angry crowd running over, he had no choice but to stand on the big cart at the mountain gate and shout, "What's going on? Don't you want to work?" The one who rushed the fastest was Gan Ziyuan. However, he suddenly saw Zhang Feng climbing onto a big cart from afar. He could not help but slam on the brakes and spread his arms to stop the crowd. Only then did he stop 3 feet away from Zhang Feng and the others. At this moment, everyone saw Zhang Feng. They could not help but look at each other. What's going on? What's going on? Didn't Feng Zi say something happened? Could it be? Is it a ghost? Is Feng Zi really dead? Everyone was dumbfounded. When Zhang Feng heard this, he was in a bad mood. Who the hell said I'm dead? Who's the one with the rotten mouth who said I'm dead? Zhang Feng was trembling with anger. As more and more people rushed over, after seeing Zhang Feng's appearance, even the women and children directly knelt on the ground and wailed. "Oh my God! What a good person! Which damned bastard came to harm him? My mother! Avenge Feng Zi! Look, Feng Zi was worried about the academy even when he died for us and for our children. Take revenge. I must take revenge. I want revenge." Seeing that everyone was crying and saying such things, how could Zhang Feng not know that there was a problem? However, he didn't know where the problem was for the time being. However, did this have anything to do with Li Gan's words? Holy shit. It was over. What the F***ck? Stop. Don't cry. Shut the F***ck up, Lao Tzu. Cheng Chumo couldn't sit still anymore. Even though his brain was a beat slower than others, he understood the cause and effect of the matter. He wanted to laugh. Wei Shuyu, Zhang Sun and the other 3 wanted to laugh as well. However, this was not the time to laugh. Under the instigation of several people, Cheng Chumo brought out his domineering aura of a stubborn demon king. Needless to say, this roar was really effective. The wailing stopped. Those who wanted to avenge Zhang Feng shrank into the crowd and didn't dare to make a sound. Zhang Feng pulled at his hair. He wanted to say something, but in the end he couldn't say a word. In the end he could only sigh helplessly. "Go back, I'm fine. Don't believe the rumors." At this moment, Zheng Tufu and the others squeezed through the crowd. When everyone saw this, their eyes couldn't help but light up. Zheng Tufu's murderous aura was the bane of spirits. He urged him, "Zheng Tufu, go take a look at Feng Zi. Are you sure he's alright?" "Yes, Zheng Tufu, your murderous aura is heavy. Go take a look." Zhang Feng had no choice but to let Zheng Tufu massage him. Zheng Tufu's face was about to explode. Wasn't Feng Zi fine? At this moment, everyone couldn't help but hold their breaths. Zheng Tufu silently tidied up Zhang Feng's messy hair. Then he waved his butcher's knife and roared, Mother asterisk Ker Gozi, you piece of trash, come out from Lao Tzu. You mother asterisk Ker dare to say that Feng Zi is dead. Do you believe that Lao Tzu will kill you first? Gozi, who was squeezed in the crowd, shuddered. He quickly shrank his body and crawled out of the crowd. At this moment, under Zheng Tufu's confirmation, everyone finally knew that Zhang Feng was fine. Only then did they leave embarrassedly. It's good that he's fine. Haha, he's fine. Go and do your work. Are you slacking off here? Let's go, let's go. Feng Zi is fine. Zhang Feng was speechless. He wished he could find someone to beat up. However, after looking around, Chen Tinyu couldn't beat him. Idiot Wei and Bug were even worse. There was only one soft and Du Dabing. But he was afraid. A beating was a beating. This grandson would surround you and recite scriptures for a few days. Who could stand that? In the end, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. He looked at Li Qingqian, who was rushing down the mountain, and shouted angrily, Li Qingqian, you bastard, die. Chapter 6:14. Li Qingqian was very anxious. A large number of students were running up the mountain. He had just seen Zhang Feng and even saw a large number of people gathered at the mountain gate. But why was there no one now? But this was not important. What was important was, he had to let Feng Zi know the good news. The path up the mountain was not straight. It was a winding road built with the mountain. At this time he could not see anyone on the road. It was as if everyone had gone up the mountain in an instant. He even saw some people cooking in the huts where the fire was lit. At this time, he suddenly heard Zhang Feng's roar. Although he could not hear it clearly, he could faintly feel that Zhang Feng and the others were running down the mountain. Li Qingqian hurriedly waved his horsewhip and shouted, Feng Zi, don't come. Run back. Get ready, people are coming. There are so many of them. But in the forest, especially in the windy forest, the meaning of these words was different. The few people running down the mountain, as well as Gan Ziyuan and the others behind them, heard, Feng Zi, don't run back. There are so many people coming. As soon as he heard this sentence, Zhang Feng didn't feel good at all. As for Gan Ziyuan, he staggered and fell into the mud. Damn it. This was the Crown Prince? What was the Crown Prince doing? He was going crazy. Zhang Feng also stopped running. He was so angry that he looked left and right. Feng Zi pulled a thin bamboo from the side of the road and held it in his hand. Instead, he listened to the sound of horse hooves and waited. Why should I run? This bastard will definitely come up. Although he did not know why he beat Li Qingqian, he had to vent his anger. And Cheng Chumo and the others did not say anything. They pursed their lips. Anyone with eyes could see that the four of them were trying very hard to hold back their laughter. But Zhang Feng did not notice this. His attention was focused on the sound of horse hooves. Hearing the sound of horse hooves gradually approaching, the laughter in their eyes deepened. But the fear in Gan Ziyuan's eyes grew stronger and stronger. Damn it, it's over. What did the Crown Prince just say? If he hit him with the stick, it would be a big problem. What should I do? Help. Or not to help? Just as Gan Ziyuan was in a dilemma about whether to help or not, Li Qingqian's white horse finally came from afar. When Li Qingqian saw Zhang Feng and the others waiting here, he was puzzled for a moment. However, he didn't think too much about it and rushed towards Zhang Feng. Before he could dismount, Zhang Feng picked up the bamboo stick and threw it at his head and face. Awoo, awoo, awoo. Don't hit me. Feng Zi, are you crazy? Why are you hitting me? F***ck, stop, stop. Holy shit. Li Qingqian was badly beaten. Most importantly, this thin bamboo stick only hurt when it hit someone, but it didn't leave any wounds. At this moment, Li Qingqian was grimacing in pain as he kept shouting. Iron Bull, you mother ***, are you still watching the show? Come and stop the fight. What is the meaning of this? ***ck. Awoo, stop hitting him, stop hitting him. If you keep hitting him, do you believe that Lao Tzu will get angry? Whoa. Before he could finish speaking, a high-pitched scream was heard. Li Qingqian had never been beaten in his life. This beating stupefied Li Qingqian's entire person. Finally, Cheng Chumo and the others couldn't stand it anymore. Cheng Chumo lifted Zhang Feng up as if he was carrying a chick. Feng Zi, calm down, calm down. Put me down. Pick me up. Who was the one being impulsive? Zhang Feng's anger had also subsided. However, he still felt uncomfortable when this matter was mentioned. Feng Zi, calm down. Listen to what he said. Don't you know him? Even if you give him 10 guts, he won't dare to say anything bad about you, right? Du Go also hurried forward to persuade him. Zhang Feng thought for a moment. He struggled out from under Cheng Chumo's iron pincers and asked, What did you shout at the foot of the mountain just now? Didn't I just shout that something happened and a lot of people came? What's the big deal? Did you beat me up because of this? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded and slapped himself hard on the face. Qing Chumo and the others were also dumbfounded. Li Qingqian was even more dumbfounded. Did this guy do it because of this? It me? Zhang Feng finally remembered something at this time. When the sound was transmitted in the wind, there would be a deviation. Why didn't I think of it just now? However, he had already hit him. What could Zhang Feng say? He coughed and said, "Do you know why I hit you?" How would Li Qingqian know? He stared at Zhang Feng and clenched his fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't dare to say anything. He hurriedly calmed himself down and said, "I asked you to go down the mountain to do something, but you just went down the mountain and ran up. 3 points will be deducted from this semester's credits, but for your sake, this meal will make up for those 3 points. Bang." Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Qingqian's fist landed on Zhang Feng's stomach. What the F***ck, I thought you were doing it for something. You hit me for this? What the F***ck? Look at the foot of the mountain. What's at the foot of the mountain? Li Qingqian was about to cry. Although he punched out, it just tickled Zhang Feng's stomach. It didn't hurt at all. He didn't dare to hit Zhang Feng. This was an unexpected disaster. This was simply an unexpected disaster. However, at this time, Zhang Feng and the others were also dumbfounded when they looked at the foot of the mountain. Zhang Feng patted Li Qingqian on the shoulder and asked blankly, "Li Qingqian, who are those people running wildly at the foot of the mountain?" Chapter 6:15. Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. At this moment, standing on the winding mountain path, they could already see the faint silhouettes of people at the foot of the mountain. There were a lot of people, but they looked slightly better than those who were fleeing. Among them, there was no lack of people wearing brightly colored clothes. That was what puzzled Zhang Feng. Li Qingqian didn't say anything. He rubbed a blood stain on his arm and snorted. Then he turned around and rode his horse up the mountain. When Zhang Feng saw Li Qingqian running away, he hurriedly followed him up the mountain. Gan Ziyuan, on the other hand, was stunned. He didn't care who was coming down the mountain. After all, this mountain was in high demand. There were many people who had come. But at this moment, the one who shocked him the most was the Crown Prince. He was beaten up and ran away without saying a word. Was that the Crown Prince? He felt that his worldview had been destroyed. The Crown Prince. He was a high and mighty person. How could it be like this? On the other side, at the foot of the mountain, Li Yifu and the others looked at the rising smoke and the banging sounds of tents and trees. They couldn't help but feel excited. Brothers, we're here. Hao Chujun and the others looked at the mountain in front of them in surprise. Is this the White Deer College mentioned in the Imperial Edict? It doesn't look like it here. They looked at the place that looked like a construction site and couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Was this an academy? Wasn't this a construction site? Let's go. Didn't you see so many people running up the mountain? That means this place is right. Lai Ji wiped the sweat off his forehead and tightened the blanket on his back. Then he hurriedly followed the footsteps of the people from Chang'an. It couldn't be helped. The people from Chang'an were very crafty. While they were eating, many people had disappeared in just a short while. When they came out of the city gates, they saw that there were more people outside the city than inside the city. How could this be? How the F***ck could this be? The people from Luozhou couldn't sit still. She scampered up the mountain after him. At this moment, just as they were about to cross the Wei River, they saw dozens of youths looking at the group in a daze. One by one they were asking questions. "Excuse me, where are you going? Brother, where are you going? Did something happen in Chang'an City?" But no one cared about them. There was no other reason. Because in the eyes of the people in Chang'an, and as long as you looked young, you would definitely go to White Deer College. How big was White Deer College? How many people could he take in? If all of them went up, wouldn't his chances be reduced? This is our Chang'an Academy. We can't let outsiders take advantage of it, can we? Therefore, as long as someone asked, the better ones would reply that they didn't know, and the worse ones wouldn't even look at them. It was as if he had met his mortal enemy. At this time, Hao Chujun and the others had just passed by these people and saw the honest Lai Ji being pulled by the arm. "Brother, may I ask where you're heading to?" I don't know, ask someone else." Without waiting for Lai Ji to speak, a fair and plump Chang'an youth who had just passed by said something in a low voice and then pulled Lai Ji forward. "Kid, if you want to go to White Deer College, don't interrupt. If you dare to say anything, your chances of entering the school will be reduced. At that time, you can do as you see fit." Under the gaze of the youth, Lai Ji nodded. "Oh," Lai Ji replied. He turned around and said, "Brother, you're going to White Deer College too. Look, we're all going to White Deer College." Li Yifu and the others were dumbfounded. The youth was dumbfounded. The youths who passed by Chang and city were dumbfounded. Everyone looked at this dark and swarthy weirdo as if they were looking at an idiot. F***ck, you're a F***king idiot. Go 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 brothers, run faster. Hao Chu-jun and the others looked at Li Ji speechlessly. Although they knew that Li Ji was doing the right thing, if they were to fall out with these people and say something bad about them in front of the examiner, then, they could only pat Li Ji's shoulder speechlessly. Let's go. The youth who had asked for directions thanked them profusely. He was inexplicably surprised and ran madly again, spreading the news along the way. They're going to White Deer College. Come back, don't go to Chang'an City. Here these people are all going to White Deer College. Hearing that, the people who came from Chang'an City and the children who were preparing to go to school ran even faster. Some of them even abandoned their luggage. They carried their dolls and ran up the mountain. They had no choice. There were so many people. If they went up, how many of them would stay? If they didn't give these foreigners a chance to speak, they would be fine as Chang'an residents. However, it was different now. Everyone panicked. Charge. Who cares? Don't bother with your luggage. As long as you enter the college, Lao Tzu will sell his house to get your luggage. Go 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 go. Damn it, don't block the way. The vast and mighty group of people, like a swarm of migrating locusts, instantly swarmed like a tidal wave toward a small three-pack in the middle of the two mountains. Hao Chu-jun and the others' luggage had been squeezed to God knows where. At this moment they could only follow the crowd up the mountain. One could imagine how dense the crowd was. Chapter 616. On the mountain. Li Qingqian was sitting in a carriage at the entrance of the mountain. A guard disguised as a servant was rubbing medicine all over his body. Li Qingqian was in so much pain that he was grimacing in pain. At this moment, Li Qingqian's guard at the foot of the mountain rushed up the mountain. Prince Zhang, bad news, bad news. Something has happened at the foot of the mountain. There are about 3,000 people at the foot of the mountain. Although most of them are in disguise, most of them are young people. It's suspected. What? Zhang Feng could not help but turn pale with fright when he heard this. At this moment, Li Qingqian glanced at Zhang Feng proudly. Now you know how to be anxious? Li Gan, Uncle Li, who are these people? Zhang Feng was anxious. Could it be that they had encountered bandits? At the thought of this, Zhang Feng could no longer remain calm. This was a possibility, a real possibility. The fact that there were 30,000 dan of grain on the mountain had long been an open secret. If they had encountered bandits, then it really made sense. Zhang Feng could not help but feel his hair stand on end. Idiot Wei, quickly get Li Gan's horse and take a shortcut down the mountain. Go get reinforcements and report to the authorities that bandits are here. Also, Tiniu, do you have a handy weapon here? Quickly call someone to guard the gate. Debing, quickly go up the mountain to find Dr. Sunday. Ask someone to hide the grain. Zhang Feng finally panicked. He finally knew why this guy was so anxious. Damn, so many people had come. Why did they not even let out a fart when they went up the mountain? Could it be that this guy had a card up his sleeve? Or, Zhang Feng could not help but feel relieved. Cheng Chumo and the others stood there motionless, allowing Zhang Feng to jump up and down like a monkey. It seemed that they had already thought of something. Looking around, Zhang Feng only saw the citizens of Tonghui Lane standing behind him with a common enemy, while Chen Tiniu and the rest looked left and right. No, this isn't right. Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something. If the bandits were here, Li Gan would be the most anxious one. He was the one who found the craftsmen and paid for the construction of the academy. If the bandits were here, he would be the most anxious one. But this guy was still so carefree. Something was wrong. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng's anxious heart calmed down for a moment. Li Gan? Brother Li, Uncle Li, tell me who is the person down there? Uncle Li? F***ck. Lao Tzu won't wait if you don't say anything. Zhang Feng also lost his temper. You're not going to tell me? Did Lao Tzu not know how to wait? Zhang Feng couldn't help but sit down as well. Old he and the others looked at each other. At this time, if they could not see anything, then they would have lived in vain. They could not help but wave their hands. Let's go to work. Only then did they leave resentfully. However, these people looked at Li Gan with unfriendly eyes. Fine. You're awesome. You offended Feng Zi today. You'll have to eat, right? When the time comes, Lao Tzu will add some spice to your sauce. At this time, Cheng Chumo and the others also gathered around Li Qingqian and sat on the bus openly. Wei Shuyu even brought a chair and sat at the mountain entrance. She even held a shoulder pole in her hand, looking ready to fight if there was any disagreement. They did not have to wait too long. After all, the time it took for Li Qingqian to go back and forth was enough for them to go up the mountain. The first batch of people went up the mountain. They stood impatiently at the mountain entrance. Those who knew Zhang Feng pointed at Zhang Feng and shouted in surprise, "Look! He's Zhang Feng. He's Zhang Feng. He's waiting for us. Hurry, 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 tidy up and greet the teacher." Clang! Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Qing Chumo and the others were also dumbfounded. Even the shoulder pole in Wei Shuyu's hand fell to the ground. "Fengzi, I say, what's going on?" Zhang Feng did not know. However, when he saw Li Gan's donkey face, he could not help but roll his eyes. He got up and cupped his fists. "Everyone, I'm Zhang Feng. What can I do for you?" Everyone saw. They hurriedly bowed with various etiquette. Student Zhang San greets the teacher. Student greets the teacher. Greetings the teacher. Voices rang out in unison at the entrance of this small mountain gate. In an instant, everyone in the White Pants Academy heard it. Everyone forgot what they were doing and stared blankly at the mountain entrance. The large group of young people were dumbfounded. Damn, what's going on? Where are the bandits going up the mountain? Why are they all kowtowing to Fengzi? Damn, could it be that imperial edict? Hiss. At the thought of this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Seeing more and more people at the mountain entrance and hearing more and more laborers gathering behind them, Zhang Feng and the others finally exploded. Cheng Chumo slapped the back of his head and shook Zhang Feng's shoulder in horror. He asked in a trembling voice, "Damn, are these all the students who came up because of the imperial edict? I'm going crazy. Who are these people? They came in a group?" Chapter 6:17. At the mountain gate, in the eyes of everyone, Zhang Feng was wearing a Confucian robe. Although he was standing quietly in the wind, he gave people the feeling that he was so elegant and free. At this time, everyone only felt that Zhang Feng was like a great Confucian, lowering his head and pondering. And they all knew the masters behind Zhang Feng. After all, who dared not to know the four great devils of Chang'an? And they were of the same age. Needless to say, Zhang Feng was actually able to make them submit to him. They did see Li Qingqian when he was riding a horse and running wildly. At this time, seeing Li Qingqian sitting there with scars on his neck and the back of his hand, how could they not know that he was beaten? Who hadn't experienced it? But who was this? This was one of the four great devils. He dared to beat him? And he beat him so obediently. Damn. This Zhang Feng was indeed not ordinary. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't speak, everyone became more respectful and couldn't help but lower their backs. Behind them, more and more people rushed to the mountain gate. The mountain gate couldn't hold them, so they stood on the hillside near the mountain gate and bowed respectfully. And behind Zhang Feng, Gan Ziyuan, eunuch Gao Mazhou, Zheng Tufu and his son all came. Looking at the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. At this time, Li Qingqian was also frightened by the people behind him. Not for anything else but because there were too many people. How much food was there on the mountain now? Are these people here to eat up the rich? He glanced at Dugo, who was actually hurriedly flipping through the account book. Several people unanimously refused to stand beside Zhang Feng and hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, aren't there too many people? So many people, my God, are they here to eat the rich? What should we do? Do you want me to ask the servants to drive them away?" It was fine if Li Qingqian didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, Zhang Feng exploded. He grabbed Li Qingqian's shoulder and shook him desperately. "What? Why didn't you say so earlier? Why didn't you say so earlier? Where did you go earlier?" Li Qingqian was speechless. "Mother ***, the moment I went up the mountain you gave me a good beating. Now you're giving me a chance to speak? ***, then why didn't you tell me when you went up the mountain?" Lao Tzu doesn't want to talk about it. What can you do about it? Zhang Feng knew that he was in the wrong, so he raised his middle finger speechlessly. "What are you waiting for? Aren't you going to register it?" Zhang Feng glared at Dugo and the others. Only then did they stifle their laughter and hurriedly move the things. Wei Shuyu and Cheng Chumo, on the other hand, had nothing to do. They stood at the entrance, each holding a shoulder pole. They glared angrily at the crowd at the entrance and roared, "Shut up! Those who want to enter the academy line up for Lao Tzu. Don't talk. Whoever dares to say a word will be kicked off the mountain by Lao Tzu. You take your men and hold the line. Whoever dares to cause trouble, break their legs and throw them off the mountain." Cheng Chumo's roar was very useful. At the very least, it intimidated the crowd. Zhang Sun Chong climbed up the sentry post and took a look at the foot of the mountain. He saw that the winding path from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain was densely packed with people. extending into the distant fog. Zhang Sunchong couldn't help but gasp. Oh my god! Why are there so many people? Zhang Sun hurriedly climbed down the sentry post and pulled Zhang Feng, saying, Fengzi, there are more people at the bottom of the mountain than on top of the mountain. There are at least 1,000 people. What should we do? There are so many people. Can our academy fit all of them? When the others heard this, they were also shocked. They hurriedly gathered beside Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng frowned. However, there was not much worry in his eyes. This was the result that he wanted. It's just a few thousand people. It's not a big deal. Which school in the future doesn't have that many people? Zhang Feng glanced at Dugo and patted his shoulder, saying, Kid, do you know why I want to build a 3-story building? If we do it the way you said, even if there are 10 Shao mountains, it won't be able to fit so many people. Indeed. Even the Imperial College of the Tang Dynasty only had a few people. At most, it could only hold about 100 people, alright? However, what about White Deer College? The college had not been built yet, but there were already so many people. What would happen after it was built? What would happen then? Just this scene alone was enough to shock the world. Not to mention after the college was opened. However, what should they do with so many people? What about the admission procedures? Fengzi, there are so many people. Are you going to accept all of them? I've observed for a while. Among these people, there are many who just want to make a living. You want these people too? That's right, Fengzi. Are you going to accept all of them? You have to think carefully. Even the Imperial College only has about 100 people in a year. You can't do it? Zhang Feng frowned slightly. Looking at the crowd at the entrance of the mountain, he could not help but come up with a brilliant plan. How about this? Dabing, Ligan, and Tainyo, I'll give you a heavy responsibility now. When they heard this, they hurriedly asked, What responsibility? The admission examination. Chapter 6:18. Admissions Assessment. This thing was actually a test to see if they had a good foundation and reaction time. He couldn't possibly recruit some idiots, right? However, Zhang Feng also considered some factors. After all, many of these people were born as bumpkins and their ancestors were illiterate. However, it didn't matter. As long as you knew a craft, it would be fine. There was no shortage of things to do here. After all, there was a shortage of kills and bricklayers. Now, he had even opened a cement factory and he needed people to do that. However, if you said you didn't even know how to do these, then why did you make a hammer? As a poor man in his teens, even if you knew how to weave straw sandals, it meant that you had the ability to support yourself. However, if you didn't even know how to do this, then get lost. Lao Tzu didn't teach idiots and sluggards. This was Zhang Feng's principle. Under Zhang Feng's detailed explanation, the eyes of these people were shining. However, Cheng Chumo also made a constructive suggestion. Fengzi, what if there's someone like me who also has boundless strength? Look at that silly big guy. Damn, he's a talent. If he doesn't have strength, then it's really a waste of his tendons. Cheng Chumo pointed to a tan strong man and said. Zhang Feng glanced at that man and was a little surprised. He was 2 meters tall, wasn't he? So tall, you? Okay, why don't we ask him to come and try? Okay. You, that tan big guy, come here. Cheng Chumo pointed at the man and beckoned him with his finger. The man pointed at his own nose, and after confirming that he was the one being called, he walked out of the crowd under the envious gazes of the crowd. Then he bowed to Zhang Feng first. Then he bowed to Cheng Chumo and the others. I'm Gao Kan's greetings to the teacher and the devil grandfathers. Gao Kan. Zhang Feng was surprised. In the blink of an eye. He grinned as if he had picked up a treasure. What a high level. F asterisk CK. A famous general under Li Ji. Mother F asterisk Ker. First he picked up Mazhou. Now he picked up another one. He even managed to get a military general? However, even though Zhang Feng was already dancing with joy in his heart, there was no trace of joy on his face. It wasn't that he wasn't happy, but his strong mental fortitude prevented him from revealing a trace of surprise. Ahem, Gao Kan, let me ask you, can you read? Gao Kan shook his head, and his tanned face couldn't help but blush. Then do you know any craft? Does eating count? Zhang Feng held back his patience and pointed to the handcart at the entrance of the mountain, as well as the bags of food that each weighed 100 pounds. He asked, since you can eat so much and are so strong, can you lift this up? Gao Kan hummed in acknowledgement. Then he walked towards the handcart. But just as he reached the handcart, he turned around and looked at Zhang Feng. He asked honestly, if I can lift it up, can I come here? Zhang Feng nodded. Cheng Chumo impatiently urged, why are you wasting time? Hurry up. Can't you see that there are so many people waiting behind? If you dare to ask one more question, This young master will tear your mouth apart. Gao Can glanced at Cheng Chumo and smiled honestly. Then, under the horrified gaze of the crowd, he actually lifted the handcart up. Handcart. It was a handcart. Zhang Feng rubbed his eyes and counted the bags of food on the handcart. Those were the food prepared for the people on the mountain today. A total of 5 bags of food, and he lifted it up so easily? 500 pounds. This handcart was at least 100 pounds. How could he lift it up so easily? What kind of freaking monster was this? Not only Zhang Feng but even Cheng Chumo and the others were staring with their eyes wide open. The surrounding students who were preparing to enter the school couldn't help but gasp. Oh my god, who is this big blockhead? I don't know. Damn it, did he grow up eating stones? Why is he so strong? What's the use of being strong? The school is a place to study and learn how to read. What's the use of being strong? Learning how to read. Hearing the exclamations of the crowd, Zhang Feng hurriedly rubbed his hands and asked him to put down the handcart. Okay, Gao Can, put it down. Put down the cart. When Gao Can heard that it was a cart of food, his eyes couldn't help but flash with excitement. He retracted his hand that was holding the axle and extended it towards Zhang Feng. Master teacher, I have been hungry for 3 days. If I put it down, can you give me a full meal? Zhang Feng's face darkened. He took a deep breath and thought about it. If he had this big blockhead as his follower, he wouldn't have to be afraid of Cheng Chumo. Okay. I will give you enough food, okay? Okay. After getting the affirmation, Gao Can put down the handcart and followed Zhang Feng. He looked at him like this, which made Zhang Feng's hair stand. Old he, bring him to eat. After the meal, let him wait for me in my study room. After arranging Gao Can, Zhang Feng looked at those people again. His eyes couldn't help but emit a fiery glow. Talents like Ma Zhou and Gao Can had appeared. Then Hao Chujun and Li Yifu should be here too. Chapter 619. Zhang Feng was looking forward to it. Looking at the crowd, he sorted out his emotions and made his voice sound even more dignified. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that all of you wish to join the White Deer Institute. Of course we will accept you, but we won't accept just anyone. There must be rules, and the reason why our White Deer Institute was able to obtain the recognition of His Majesty is precisely because we broke the barrier of convention. That's why we can stand proudly here. I, Zhang Feng, am fortunate enough to become the Chancellor of the White Deer Institute, so I have to follow the rules. Confucius once said, you can't give up on books. In this world there is no free food. Therefore, the first rule of entering the White Deer Institute is that you can either write, read, or know how to make a living. Otherwise you can be like Gao, Kansas. Not to mention lifting this cart. As long as you can lift 2 sacks of food, my White Deer Institute will accept you. However, if you can't even do this, then this construction site still needs manpower. You can treat it as if you're looking for a place to make a living. There will be enough food. What kind of rule is this? The imperial edict didn't say anything like this. Prince Zhang, why are you doing this? That's right. We are all poor people. How can we be literate? If we were literate, we wouldn't be. Bam! The moment Zhang Feng finished speaking, everyone who came out of the mountain gate was in an uproar, like a pot of boiling water. While they were chattering, Cheng Chumo suddenly punched a log that was as thick as a rice bowl. Instantly, the log broke into 2 under everyone's horrified gazes. Cheng Chumo imitated Zhang Feng's mannerisms. He put his hands behind his back and shouted pretentiously, "This is the rule. This is the rule here. If anyone doesn't follow the rules, this log will be their example. Now let's begin the registration." His act was perfect, but Li Qingqian and the others behind him stared straight at Cheng Chumo's swollen right hand behind his back. They couldn't help but silently give him a thumbs up. Awesome. Awesome. That was awesome. In order to act cool, he even gave up his hand. And Cheng Chumo's voice was enough to deter them. At this moment, everyone finally behaved themselves. Zhang Feng glanced at the crowd and left in a hurry. After all, this silly Gao Can still needed to be taught a good lesson. After Zhang Feng left, Li Qingqian and Du Go brought up a square couch and placed it at the entrance of the academy. Zhu Zi carefully waited on the side, grinding for Li Qingqian and Du Go. Ever since Zhu Zi and Go Zi followed Li Qingqian and Du Go, their image had changed drastically. This was especially true for Li Qingqian and Du Go. It was almost as if they were comparing themselves to each other, directly treating the 2 of them as page boys. This caused Zhang Feng to grit his teeth. At this time, Zhu Zi was wearing a green and white errand boy outfit, with 2 white silk ribbons tied around his head. With this outfit, he turned from a clay doll on the street into a handsome little errand boy. This was simply like a chicken turning into a phoenix. After the two of them set up their desks, Cheng Chumo, Zhang Sun, Chong, and Wei Shiyu followed suit and set up 3 desks. However, they were all made of wooden planks. After all, the 3 of them didn't rely on their writing skills but on their skills. Behind the 3 of them, Cheng Chumo was actually following Steamed Bun. To others, this fellow would frown coldly, but to Steamed Bun, he doted on her more than Steamed Bun's father, who was also Zhu Zi's father. At this time she was eating malt candy and wearing a silk dress. Although she was only 8 years old, it could be seen that she was a beauty. At this time, Steamed Bun was also quite obedient. She kept calling Cheng Chumo brother Nyo, which made Cheng Chumo's heart jump. Cheng Chumo hugged Steamed Bun with one hand and held a military book with the other as he shouted angrily. "If you have some strength, come here and fight with me. If you can make me feel pain or make me cry, then you pass. If you can't, then you have to carry 2 bags of food for me and run around the Shao Mountain. If you can't, then you have to teach me a military book." "That's right," Zhang Wuji said. "If you know how to cook, come here and register with me. If you know how to do business, come here." Wei Shiyu and Zhang Sun weren't so lucky. The 3 of them picked the good ones one by one. The 2 of them picked 2 strong young men who looked smart. In just a short while, White Deer College's enrollment process could be considered to have begun. After everyone pondered for a while, they obediently lined up in a long line under the intimidating sight of the wooden log and the angry glares of the fierce servants. "You, what's your name?" "Wang Erniu." "Can you read?" "I can read. If I want to write, I can only write my name." "All right, write 1 and pay 1 copper coin." Wang Erniu was taken aback. "Sir, didn't they say that it's free?" Li Qingqian was furious. "It's free? You think the ink and paper are free? You don't even have 1 copper coin. Do you think this is a charity hall? Scram if you don't have money." Wang Erniu's face turned green and white. At this moment, Hao Chujun blocked Wang Erniu and cupped his hands. "Brother, I'll pay this fellow's 1 copper coin." Li Qingqian looked at Hao Chujun in astonishment. Then he ticked Wang Erniu's name and pointed down MT. 1,000. "Did you see those houses being renovated when you went up the mountain? Take this to the manager and tell him you're going to register." Wang Erniu was taken aback. Li Qingqian roared impatiently, "Anyone who registers here must personally participate in the construction of their houses. This is also considered an entrance examination. If you can't even do it yourself, you'll be the scum of the Tang dynasty once you leave the academy. Those who want to enter White Deer College, listen up." Next. Wang Erniu was taken aback. Finally, he cupped his hands at Hao Chujun and left. Name: Hao Chujun of Anzhou. Chapter 620. Even if they only needed to register a name, and then take out the certificate issued by the official of the place where the household registration was located. Even so, it lasted from around noon all the way to the evening before it finally ended. At this time, Li Qingqian and the others looked at Gao Ken, who was standing behind Zhang Feng like a wooden stake, and were speechless. They didn't know what Zhang Feng said to this thing, but it actually made him follow Zhang Feng wholeheartedly. Li Qingqian and the others looked at the 9 feet tall Gao Ken and couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh. In the future, it would be impossible to abuse Zhang Feng again. This guy also learned to be smart. But this was not the point. The point was that this guy actually looked at the name on the registration book and actually laughed wretchedly. Everyone couldn't help but watch it. Cheng Chumo even whispered something in Steamed Bun's ear, and then Steamed Bun actually ran over and said crisply, "Brother Fengzi, Brother Nyo said that your smile is so wretched." Zhang Feng heard this and his face instantly twisted. Gao Can, who was standing behind Zhang Feng, glared and was about to beat Steamed Bun. Zhang Feng was so scared that he hurriedly blocked Gao Can, touched Steamed Bun's head and said, "You go and tell him that I said to let him pick up feces tomorrow, or I'll deduct his credits." PFFF, ha ha, Iron Nyo, you have nothing better to do. You dare to make such a joke with Fengzi. Now you've gone too far, right? Cheng Chumo looked at Zhang Feng with disdain and said lightly, "Steamed Bun, your brother Fengzi asked you to pick up feces tomorrow. Are you going?" "No, Brother Nyo will pick." Steamed Bun blinked his eyes and looked between Zhang Feng and Cheng Chumo. Then his answer made Cheng Chumo scared. Okay, you guys go back to sleep. Let's discuss what to do next." Zhang Feng was too lazy to say anything more. To be able to recruit Gao Can today was simply picking up a treasure. This fellow was recorded in history as being ranked 5th in the late Tang Taizong period and the early Li Ji period. If he could recruit such a ferocious person as his subordinate and properly train him, he would be a great help to him in the future. What's more, Hao Chujun, Li Yifu, and the others were also here. How could he not be excited? Guzi, Zhu Zi, and Steamed Bun had all left, but that hothead Gaoken was still standing behind Zhang Feng unmoved. Li Qingqian and the others also looked at him speechlessly. Seeing this, Zhang Feng curiously turned around and saw that this guy was still standing there. He said, "Gaoken, go to sleep. If you don't sleep, go guard the door for me." "No, you said it. If you want me to stay close to you, then I will stay close to you." "Fine. Then you can stand." Zhang Feng was too lazy to speak, but he was also a little confused. Was this still the 5th-rank general? How could this be an iron fool? But at this time he couldn't care so much. He knocked on the roster and said, "How many people did you recruit today?" 1125 people. "I think there will be more later, but it shouldn't be as scary as today." "But Feng Zi, with so many people, how do you want to handle it? If you teach alone, won't you be King tired to death? Do you want to invite old Xiaocai and Mr. Li Gang up here?" Li Qingqian put his hands on the table, his face solemn. With so many people, although all of them had joined the construction at the construction site, it was not a long-term solution. One day these things would be built, but what about after it was built? They had to teach, right? What to do? Zhang Feng coughed and said, "I just thought about this. The people we recruited today are very good. There are a few very good seedlings such as Li Yifu, Li Ji and Hao Chujun. These guys need to be taken care of." Zhang Feng was silent for a moment, then looked at Qing Chumo and the others and said, "Do you know something called military science?" "What? What's military science?" The few of them were confused. Li Qingqian frowned and asked, "Are you talking about studying military books? That stuff is not something the academy should." "CK, don't tell me you want to teach this stuff?" Li Qingqian seemed to have thought of something and asked in surprise. Zhang Feng nodded. "That's right. Now it's time to divide the subjects. I know you don't know what subjects are, and I can't be bothered to explain it to you. You will understand later. But there's one thing you have to remember. Since I have opened a unique academy, then I have to completely separate myself from these things. First, everyone must learn mathematics. Bing, make something to memorize. When the time comes, we will divide the subjects." Du Go heard this and hurriedly took out a brush, ink, paper and inkstone. Li Qingqian also helped to grind. At this moment, Zhang Feng said, "Physics and mathematics. Majored in mathematics, physics and chemistry. Actually, these three can be grouped into one thing, and that's called science. However, mathematics is the foundation and it's something that must be learned. As for science, only people at your level are qualified to learn it, or very talented people can come into contact with it. Otherwise, this thing can cause a big problem if it's not handled properly. Hence, we have to use our own people. There's also medicine, military science, business science and technical science." As Zhang Feng spoke, he organized the subjects that needed to be learned in primary schools in the future, combined with the situation in the Tang dynasty, and then explained in detail. However, it took Zhang Feng 6 hours to explain all these things in detail. Li Qingqian and the others only felt dizzy. Du Go looked at the few of them and said, "Fengzi, can you say it again? I didn't hear it clearly just now. I was just recording." Chapter 621. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't hear him clearly. They had already recorded it. How could they not hear him clearly? That was simply nonsense. However, these things were too unbelievable for him. They couldn't help but feel incredulous. Li Qingqian sorted out his thoughts, took a deep breath and asked, "Fengzi, we've heard of physics before. We also know about mathematics. But what is this chemistry you mentioned? What's the use of this stuff? In medicine. Is this the purpose of you inviting Dr. Sun Simiao up the mountain? Also, military, this stuff. Are you going to find the group of veterans from the reclining workshop to teach these students? Isn't this nonsense?" These were too unbelievable. Not to mention other things, they all knew about business. In fact, it was the art of merchants. They knew this before. There was also this technical school. But military medicine and science, what the hell were these? It was too unbelievable. Even if you said that you were studying the 8 trigrams of Zhou Yi or something, it would still make sense. If you were studying something like Sun Tzu's art of war, it would still make sense. But you directly said that it was military. Zhang Feng didn't care about this and knocked on the table. "Do you still remember the matter of dealing with Tubo and the Turks? In fact, although this seems to be national policy, it's not completely true. This is actually military science. Sun Tzu's art of war is actually military science. It doesn't include fighting and killing. Training to fight and kill is to see the overall quality of a soldier." "Yes, I remember that I've told you before. I don't teach those who only know how to cut their throats with the radiographic films, nor do I teach those who only know how to talk on paper. I can't afford to lose face like that. What I want to teach is the kind of person who can be as awesome as Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, Li Jing, Qin Xiong and Qin Shubao in the future. If it's an ordinary soldier? If I, Zhang Feng, can teach such a person, Lao Tzu will bang his head against the wall. They were shocked. Finally, they remembered what Zhang Feng said to them that night. He wanted Cheng Chumo to be an invincible heavy cavalry. Wei Shuyu wanted to be an assassin without leaving a trace. And Zhang Sun? That goes without saying. Previously, after the appearance of the unbreakable shield and the unbreakable spear, as well as the recent events, they had really forgotten about it. But now that Zhang Feng said it again, everyone couldn't help but be shocked again. What was Zhang Feng doing? He was King teaching them real skills. No. Li Qingqian slammed the table in excitement. He stood up and roared. This gave Zhang Feng a big fright. What? Are you crazy? Li Qingqian didn't pay attention to Zhang Feng's words. Instead, he anxiously said, Feng Zi, if you only handed this matter to Tai Nyo and us, then we wouldn't have anything to say. We are brothers, but you want to spread this information? Do you know that His Majesty has issued a decree forbidding the private distribution of military books? Do you know the reason? How could Zhang Feng not know? You don't have to worry about that. I know what you're worried about. It's nothing more than teaching some ungrateful brats that will rebel. Sure. Li Qingqian hurriedly covered Zhang Feng's mouth. Zhang Feng waved his hand indifferently. I've thought about this matter many times. Look at the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Tubo, Turks for example, Shirwei, Goguryeo and so on are all around. As for what I teach, don't worry. I'll only teach the core knowledge to you. As for the rest, other than the academy, it's up to His Majesty to use them. These are not things that we need to worry about. But when it comes to selecting people, you'd better pay more attention. Do you know why I made mathematics the main course, medicine the auxiliary course, and poetry, books, etiquette, and so on as the auxiliary course? It's mainly to build their character. In fact, people are not bad at the beginning. It's only later that they'll be slowly driven by the interests and the wildness in their hearts. To teach military scholars, you must pass this test first, so you can rest assured. However, how could Li Qingqian be so assured? But he believed in Zhang Feng. In his hands, even he, the crown prince, was obedient, not to mention those bastards. If it really didn't work, thinking of this, Li Qingqian could not help but have a murderous look in his eyes. Just as Zhang Feng said, if they were not used by him, he would kill them. By the way, when will the physics class you mentioned start? And chemistry, what the hell is that? Is it more powerful than physics? Dugo had been thinking about physics all this time. At this time, when Li Qingqian finished speaking, he hurried before Cheng Chumo and the others and asked this question. Zhang Feng could not help but be amused. Actually, it's not a big deal. Do you know why I set up a research institute? What do you think the research institute is going to do? Isn't it just ships and cars that can travel millions of miles in a day? Li Qingqian said so subconsciously. However, Zhang Feng shook his head. Wrong. What do you think the Tang dynasty lacks the most now? Food. Li Qingqian, Dugo, Cheng Chumo and the others said in unison. Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. If I say that if this science of mine is developed, the Tang dynasty will not lack food. Even if it's a dry day, it will still be able to make the people full of food, would you believe me? Chapter 622. Li Qingqian and the others were completely shocked. Let the people fill their warehouses? Even the Emperor of Qin and the Emperor of Han didn't dare to say such a thing. How could a small research institute of White Deer College come up with such a thing? Since they were shocked, they hurriedly asked. However, Zhang Feng wouldn't say anything even if he was beaten to death. He only said a few words in a despicable manner. All you need to know is that the core of White Deer College is actually for the three big factories, the steel factory that is invulnerable, the loom that doesn't require manpower and can weave 3,000 feet of cloth in a day, and the rubber factory. That's all. As for the rest, you will know when the time comes. The core isn't the research institute? Dugo was dumbfounded. However, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at him. Li Qingqian then said dizzily, what Feng means is that this research institute is a secret of White Deer College that no one other than the few of us can know about. Dugo nodded in realization. He pointed at Gao Can, who was snoring like a wooden stake, and said, what about him? He heard it too. The others were speechless. What kind of godly person was this? How could he fall asleep at this time? No wonder Feng Zi would let this guy be his follower. Wasn't this 2F** king useful? However, there's still a main problem now, Feng. Zhang Sun spread his hands and said, no matter how awesome you say it, you still lack manpower. Don't tell me you're going to tire yourself to death with these thousands of people? When Zhang Feng heard this, he finally understood. It was true. There were so many people and he was alone. He was going crazy. Zhang Feng touched his mouth and pondered for a long time, but he couldn't think of a solution. This Chang and University was basically a cover-up and prepared for those who really didn't have much talent. After the first semester, those with poor grades would be sent over. If Li Gang still couldn't solve it, then they would be kicked out. This was also a way to make use of trash. It couldn't be revoked for now. In that case, there was really no one to use. Zhang Feng could not help but sigh. Previously, he was worried that no one would come. That's right. What I'm worried about now is where will the people come from to guide these guys? You can't expect me to teach them word by word, right? Wouldn't he be exhausted to death? However, it was still early. There was still time. Zhang Feng rubbed his throbbing temples and waved his hand. Go to sleep. I'll only say this once. Tomorrow, I'll go down the mountain and wander around Chang and city to think of a solution. Also, during this period of time, your task is to move all the books in your house for Lao Tzu to boost his reputation. Also, Li Gan, go and ask your father where his preface to the Orchid Pavilion is. How long has it been? It's time to fulfill the promise. The academy is too cold. Why don't you guys worry about it? You even say it's a good thing. Sigh. Zhang Feng scampered off amidst his nagging. All that was left was a group of people in a mess. What's wrong with Fengzi? If he wants books, just ask for books. Why did he have to make it sound so fresh and refined? Li Qingqian looked at Zhang Feng in disdain. Isn't this how he's always done things? Sigh. He's just pretending to be cool. It's really fresh and refined. Let's go to sleep. I want to ask my father for books. But, speaking of which, De Bing, without waiting for Li Qingqian to speak, Dugo clutched his stomach and screamed. Ouch. My stomach hurts. Everyone take your time to chat. I'm leaving. Li Qingqian was speechless. He looked at Qing Chumo, then at Zhang Sun and Wei Shiyu. Well, it seems that we'll have to rely on ourselves for this matter. The rest is easy. I can get some things from my place. However, there are still some strange books that I'll need the three of you to deal with. That shouldn't be a problem, right? What could they say? The Crown Prince had already spoken. Even if there was a problem, there would be no problem. Who could compare with Dugo? Qing Chumo did not mind. Anyway, although there were many books in his house, they were, in fact, obtained by his father to put up a front. As for the real good books, it would be up to Wei Shiyu to do it. This guy definitely had more strange books in his house than anyone else. Li Qingqian slapped his forehead, finally remembering an important matter. Worm, I remember that you have a book, Wei Liaozi, at home, right? When Zhang Sun heard this, his face could not help but turn a little ugly. I do have it, but this thing is my father's favorite. It's not easy for me to take it. It's fine. Just tell him that Fengzi wants it and he'll take it out for you himself. There's also the Book of Jin, the Three Lu and the Six Tao. Have you heard of these things? Li Qingqian racked his brains and asked one by one. He had to make use of this good opportunity to get all these good things out. Even he only knew about these things when he chatted with Li Gang in the past. He really did not know where these things could be found. If he could make use of this opportunity to get his hands on them, then his life would not be in vain. As for Dugo, who was hiding outside the door, actually did not go to the outhouse because of a stomachache. When he heard that there were so many good books, how could he sit still? He hurriedly said, I know about this. Previously, when I was at the bad guy's house, I happened to hear him mention a book called the Six Tao. It would have been better if he did not say anything. Once he said that, Li Qingqian and the others could not help but laugh evilly. I'll leave the rest of the books to you. It's your fault for having so many books. Chapter 623. The next morning. After saying goodbye to everyone, Zhang Feng went to Chang and city leisurely on a roller coaster. Although Li Qingqian tried to persuade him to sit in the great scholar's sedan chair or ride his white horse, Zhang Feng didn't know how to ride a horse. Besides, he didn't want to be too conspicuous. At this time, some small vendors and stalls had already been developed at the foot of the ruined mountain. Even the traveling merchants had built a simple shed with trees and started to do small business in it. Not to mention that the business was not in Chang'an City. For example, the barbecue cellar. Now, the barbecue was mainly chicken and duck meat, which suited the taste of the hard work on the mountain. Even Qing Chumo and the others went down the mountain from time to time to make some barbecue and drink a big barrel of beer. Then they went up the mountain while humming a song. Not to mention the common people. After a day's work, they went to drink a bamboo tube of beer at night. Although they couldn't afford the barbecue, at least they could smell the fragrance and drink the beer. At this time, standing outside Chang'an City, looking at the mottled city wall, Zhang Feng had the illusion that he saw the city wall of Chang and city in the future. Sparse people were going in and out listlessly. On the way he saw some teenagers who were excited to go to the academy. Entering Chang and city. The disaster victims in the city were obviously reduced a lot. Zhang Feng was a little puzzled. It seemed that the disaster was under control. But why were more and more people gathering on the mountain? It was not a good sign if it went on like this. Although there were 30,000 dawn of grain, the original 5 or 6,000 people, plus the current 1,200 people, were almost 10,000 people. With so many people, the 30,000 dawn of grain would be used up. No, he had to find a way. The streets of Chang and were very clean. Most of them were peddlers, but the pedestrians on the street were much less. At the gate of the treasury, there were still some refugees waiting to be given porridge, but there were not as many as before. Along the way, Zhang Feng was also thinking about how to get rid of this thing. After all, it would be a big problem if he just sat there and did nothing. Just as Zhang Feng entered Tong Hui Fang, he was spotted by a few women. Yo, Fengzi, you're back? Everyone come out quickly. Quietly, Fengzi is back. Fengzi, you're back. Come out. The originally quiet Tong Hui Lane was filled with shouts. Gradually, people came out of their homes and stood on both sides of the road, looking at Zhang Feng. Instead, he left him a straight path to the tavern. Zhang Feng was speechless. Was it necessary? Wasn't it just a trip out? Why were they all so polite? Zhang Feng could only grin like an idiot as he clasped his fists and thanked everyone. With great difficulty he finally made it to the tavern. Zhang Feng finally let out a deep sigh of relief. He took a piece of smoked bacon and threw it into the pot to wash it. Then he set up the firewood and took out a jar of good wine. He lay down on the recliner and swayed gently. It was still more comfortable to be at home. However, just as Zhang Feng cooked up 3 dishes and was about to have a good drink before going to look for Lao Li, someone knocked on the door of the tavern. Brother Zhang Feng? Brother Zhang Feng? Who is it? It's me, Lao Feng. Lao Feng? Zhang Feng was a little surprised. However, he still put down the wine jar and opened the door of the tavern. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Fang Xianling squinting and stroking his beard while sizing up Zhang Feng. Beside him was an old man in a purple robe with white beard and gray hair. His face was ruddy, but his nose was extremely red as if he had been scalded by boiling water. The old man looked a little strange, but his arrogant aura was emitted from the inside out. It was impossible to fake it. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Lao Feng is here? This is... Fang Xianling stroked his white beard and glanced at Zhang Feng mysteriously. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he pushed Zhang Feng away a little and respectfully invited that person into the tavern. As soon as he entered the tavern, that person saw the poem on the wall. He couldn't help but look a little awe-inspiring. This, young friend, is this the poem you wrote? Zhang Feng couldn't figure out who this person was, so he could only nod. I was drunk and randomly drew it. I didn't have time to clean it up. Excuse me, sir. The old man's face became serious. Such a good poem. If you clean it up, wouldn't it be a pity? It's good like this. It added some liveliness to your tavern. Toasting, don't stop drinking. This is the poetry that a tavern should have. Good poem, good poem. Zhang Feng was also puzzled. The mystery of Lao Feng and the old man made him somewhat unable to figure out the old man's background. Could it be the emperor? No. Could he invite Li Shimin? Moreover, Li Shimin wasn't that old, okay? Although Zhang Feng hadn't seen Li Shimin, he still remembered this history. At this time, Li Shimin was about 40 years old. If you say he was Li Yuan, he didn't look like it. Moreover, if these two went out of the palace, wouldn't it shake the heaven and earth? How could it be so calm? No, this person wasn't these two at all. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask, "Excuse me, sir, you are... I'm Yu Shernan." Chapter 624. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He was completely dumbfounded. Yu Shernan? This master was a renowned literary giant of the Great Tang, a great Confucian of his generation. Moreover, he was one of Li Shimin's favored men. Moreover, he was highly accomplished in politics, poetry, and calligraphy. Especially the Beitang Book of Banknotes, which was a great work. To be able to leave behind a work of authorship in this era, how awesome was that? Just think about it. But now, I can't believe I actually saw a living person in my tavern. After a moment of surprise, Zhang Feng hurriedly wiped his hands on his clothes and habitually reached out to shake Yu Shernan's hand. However, after reaching out, he realized that this wasn't a proper etiquette at all. He hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed. Student Zhang Feng is here to pay respects to Senior Bo Shi. Generally, when people saw Yu Shernan, they would respectfully address him as the great Confucian scholar, but Zhang Feng was different. Who asked Lao Li to be so capable that he even got him the identity of a great Confucian scholar. Unbeknownst to Li Qingqian, Zhang Fengsai's poetry collection had passed through old Li's hands. Afterwards he had shown it to Yu Shernan, Chu Suiliang and the others. Then, under the witness of these four masters, Zhang Feng became a great Confucian scholar without anyone noticing. Moreover, the inscribed board of the Chang and Academy had the signatures of these four masters. This thing was a golden signboard in the Tang dynasty. Generally, if a person wanted to become a great Confucian scholar, at least 10 great Confucian scholars had to jointly recommend him, and then he had to make a backup record in the Imperial College, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Supreme Court. Only then would the Imperial Court issue a document. But that was not all. You also had to be recognized by the Shandong gentry. You had to get a great Confucian jade plate issued by the Shandong gentry, which was equivalent to an identity card. Don't ask why the Shandong gentry had such qualifications, because they considered themselves as the descendants of Confucius. Who in the world dared to offend them? Who would dare to question him? At this moment, Yu Shernan also accepted Zhang Feng's bow. This was the etiquette of a junior greeting an elder, and not the etiquette of a student greeting a teacher. If it was someone else it wouldn't be appropriate, but Zhang Feng was different. On one hand he was a junior. On the other hand he was recommended by Yu Shernan. This was equivalent to being Yu Shernan's student. At this moment, Yu Shernan stroked his beard and personally helped Zhang Feng up. Fang Xianling had been eating by himself for a long time. I say, the two of you don't just stand there. Brother Bo Shi, this is Zhang Feng's signature dish and his signature wine. You won't be able to drink it anywhere else in the Tang dynasty except here. As soon as he heard about the wine, Yu Shernan's eyes couldn't help but be attracted by Fang Xuanling's wine bowl. He ignored Zhang Feng, sat down, grabbed a piece of braised bacon and urged Fang Xianling to pour wine for him. A bowl of wine went down his stomach. Yu Shernan's red nose was like a piece of red-hot iron, so red that it was shining. Ah. Good wine. This is good wine. Haha, come on little friend Zhang Feng, sit down, let's talk while eating. Okay. Zhang Feng agreed. He was about to say a word of thanks, but he held back for a long time and couldn't say it. The problem was, this was his pub, wasn't it? Zhang Feng could only sit down embarrassedly and eat and drink by himself. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, the 3 of them drank 5 large jugs of 15% white wine. Only then did they feel dizzy, touched their stomachs and burped. Little friend Zhang Feng, you're going to treat this wine like a treasure? Yu Shernan said very bluntly. What he meant was, you're going to hide something good. You don't want people to know? However, Zhang Feng knew that if this sentence was said by Lao Li, it must be directed at the wine. However, this was Yu Shernan. How could he not think about what he said? Zhang Feng thought for a while, then said, Mr. Bo Shi, you're joking. Although this wine is good, it's precious because it's rare. I also know that it's better to enjoy it with others than to enjoy it alone. However, this wine needs people who understand it to taste it. Those who only know how to drink like a donkey won't understand the true essence of this wine. Yu Shernan smiled. Little friend, are you saying that White Deer College is also like this? No. Mr. Bo Shi, you're joking. The college is a place to educate people. How can it be compared to wine? But do you know that the path of a teacher is not easily taught? I know. However, although I've waived the entrance fee, every student has to work at White Deer College to pay off their debts. Hearing this, Yu Shernan's interest was piqued. Then tell me, how do you intend to pay off your debts? How come I've heard that you're using work as a substitute? Zhang Feng knew that this old man was here to ask about this. After all, the stubborn scholars of this era all believed that books should not be studied for nothing. This was also the reason why scholars in this era were superior to others. However, Zhang Feng did the opposite. He directly let everyone have books to study. Wasn't this a huge taboo? However, the reason why no one came to find trouble with him was mainly because of Zhang Feng's unimaginable philosophy of running a school and those incomparably complicated subjects. Everyone thought that he was just fooling around. On the other hand, this college, in the eyes of the people at the top, was actually just a toy for the crown prince. Chapter 625. Zhang Feng said after pondering for a while. Mr. Bo Shi, may I ask how many literati there are in this world? Less than 1 level. Zhang Feng asked. Then may I ask if these people can pick up their swords and go to the battlefield to kill the enemy when the country is in danger? Yu Shernan thought for a while and his face became serious. Oh. Well, may I ask Mr. Bo Shi, why should the literati be 1 level higher than the common people? Why is that? In this time of famine, it is the literati who suffer. Can what we learn from books help the world? When the country is in danger, can these literati protect the country? Yu Shernan's face changed. He sighed and said, "No." Zhang Feng also sighed. He pointed out the window and said, "The literati of the Tang dynasty occupy one level, but they have a salary every day. The poor people can only face the yellow soil. They are like peonies surrounded by the common people. Think about it, if a garden is full of weeds and yellow soil, won't it be beautiful? If there are not only peonies in this garden, but also other flowers and plants to serve as a foil, then what would it be? This is a garden of flowers. The former is like the current situation of the Tang dynasty. I am not talented, but I can't bear to see that there is only one peony left in this beautiful picture of mountains and rivers. Therefore, I use my own strength in this way to add a little green to this garden." Yu Shernan's entire body turned solemn. And so did Fang Xianling. In fact, he came to Zhang Feng's place today because he was pestered by Yu Shernan. In Li Shimin's study, Yu Shernan accidentally learned about Zhang Feng's calligraphy and found a poem that didn't belong to the collection in Fang Xuanling's study. He couldn't help but be interested. But he didn't know. The poetry collection that Li Shimin had shown him was only half of it. To be precise, it was not even half of it. It was just that Li Shimin picked out a few poems and didn't let him finish reading them. However, all of this had shocked Yu Shernan, which was why he had strongly recommended Zhang Feng. But now, Yu Shernan had a deeper understanding of Zhang Feng. This guy looked a little rash, but when he said that, Yu Shernan really saw a different side of him, especially Zhang Feng's view of the current Tang dynasty. It was not something that a person of his age could understand. "Little friend Zhang Feng, you're right, but people are divided into different grades and ranks. This is something that has existed since ancient times. Don't tell me that you think this is wrong? When people are just born, there is not much difference. As long as they have enough to eat and wear, it is enough. The difference is what happens after they have spiritual wisdom. At this time, the differences between people will be revealed one by one. Some people, with a teacher taking the lead, are like an old cow teaching a calf to plow the field and pull a cart. With some teaching, they will make faster progress. Without teaching, they will naturally make slower progress and even live in ignorance for the rest of their lives. Without considering a monster like you, the difference between those who have read books and those who have not can be reflected. Thus, the division of the upper and lower, the division of the 3 grades and 9 ranks, and the division of the social class came out. In ancient times, people practiced slash and burn cultivation, and it was difficult for them to survive. That was why there were groups of people for warmth and ethnic groups. After living in groups, they got more food and there was trade between ethnic groups. And this led to a few things. Some people got more and some people got less. Therefore, there was selfishness. That was why there was everything after that. At birth, people are good by nature. Their natures are similar, but their habits are different. Yu Shernan said this very slowly. And the essence in his eyes made Zhang Feng a little shocked. But this was a matter of philosophy. Zhang Feng nodded and said, "I know what Mr. Bosher means, but just now you said that people are good by nature. Their natures are similar, but their habits are different. That is to say, everyone should be equal." "Wrong." Yu Shernan waved his hand. He sighed and said, "If that is the case, it is really beautiful, but do you think it is possible?" "Yes. The reason why there is a division of the upper and lower, and the division of the social class, is to better survive. If there is no one who centralizes power and controls power, then who in the world will have a good life? Take the 3 kingdoms as an example. How do you think the people lived in troubled times?" Zhang Feng also fell silent. Yu Shernan said, "Boy, I know what you are thinking. You just want to create more useful people for the Tang dynasty. This is a good idea and I support your approach. But you have to remember one thing, and that is nature. Don't forget nature, otherwise..." Zhang Feng's face was solemn. How could he not know what Yu Shernan meant at this time? He couldn't help but take a deep breath and bow. The student has learned something. "Ha ha, you are worth teaching. Brother Fang, you've won." Yu Shernan laughed heartily. Then he waved his hand and motioned for Zhang Feng to get the wine. Zhang Feng fetched a jar of wine and personally poured it for Yu Shernan. However, at this time, Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something. Chapter 626. Didn't he go down the mountain because of this matter? Now that this person had taken the initiative to come knocking on his door, it seemed that this collection of poems was still useful. Tomorrow he would have to distribute all the poems so that those great scholars would take the initiative to come knocking on his door. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help sighing with a sad face. "Old Mr. Bosher, there's something you don't know. Although I have the intention of teaching and educating people, I can't cook without rice. Fang Xianling glanced at Zhang Feng. How could he not know what this guy was up to? But he couldn't say anything. After all, he knew the situation on the mountain. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng's appearance, Fang Xianling could only help him and said, "Brother Bo Shi, you didn't go to Feng Zi's place, but my son has been there for more than 10 days. The last time he came back, I heard that there were basically shacks there. You don't know, right? This guy emptied his family's property in exchange for 20,000 don of grain. Without his 20,000 don of grain, the price of grain in Chang and city would be 10 times higher." Hearing this, Yu Shinan couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng in surprise. He stroked his beard and nodded. "That's right. Practice what you learn and apply it. This is my role model for scholars. Don't worry if you have any difficulties, just tell the old man." Although the old man isn't as magnanimous as you, and doesn't have 20,000 don of grain, there are many students from the old man. When the time comes, I'll write a letter to ask them to help the academy, and also show my sincerity. Hearing this, Zhang Feng hurried to the left. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Bo Shi." Yu Shinan laughed heartily. The three of them drank a cup of wine and saw that Zhang Feng was still frowning. Yu Shinan asked again. "It seems that you have something that you can't tell me?" "Of course. And it was a big problem." Hearing this, Zhang Feng sighed again and nodded. Yu Shinan narrowed his eyes. "Let's hear it." "The old man wants to see who is so bold as to go against the academy issued by the Emperor's imperial edict." "Don't worry, old man will take care of this matter for you." "Tell me what exactly?" "Old Mr. Bo Shi, this isn't a matter of who's against you. Like I said before, I can't cook without rice." Yu Shinan put down a piece of bacon in surprise and asked, "Tell me about it." Seeing that Yu Shinan had taken the bait, Zhang Feng said, "Everything is going well in the academy. In the past few days, we have accepted almost 1,000 students. If we count according to the number of students who have come to the academy in the past few days, it is estimated that there will be about 5,000 students." Yu Shinan couldn't help but cry out in alarm. "So many people? What are you trying to do?" Zhang Feng spread his hands. As this brat said, "It's precisely to add some color to the Great Tang's flower scroll. Moreover, I've opened up many subjects, which is why so many of these poor people are flooding into my academy." "I know what you are worried about. Yes, my academy does have a lot of people. However, only a few of them may soar to the sky, but what about the rest? Although my academy is not like the Imperial College, where some people are selected from the root, the people who can graduate from my academy can basically escape from poverty. And the key lies in the subjects that I have set up." Yu Shinan heaved a sigh. In fact, Yu Shinan had long heard of Zhang Feng's unimaginable teaching philosophy. To be honest, in the beginning, Yu Shinan really didn't care about such things. He could find an experienced teacher in the market and learn for 3 to 5 years. Then he could reach a higher level and earn some money to support his family. Why did he have to come here? But when Zhang Feng mentioned the picture scroll, Yu Shinan couldn't help but accept Zhang Feng's idea. However, 5,000 people. One could imagine how much effort it would take to nurture all these people. If it was him, he wouldn't do it. However, the so-called subjects still aroused Yu Shinan's interest. "Young friend, there are so many people. Are you sure they are all attracted by your subjects?" That's what the old man couldn't figure out. In this academy, which one doesn't strive for excellence? It's easy for people like you to make up the numbers. Seeing that Yu Shinan was slowly taking the bait, Zhang Feng said, "Mr. Bo Shi, although 5,000 people are a lot, it's still too little for the current Tang dynasty. I urgently hope that if there are 50,000 people or even 500,000 people who can read, then the Tang dynasty can really be prosperous and the people can live in peace." "What do you mean?" "It's very simple. Look at the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Basically, the trade and commerce has crossed Lingnan, Zhenla, Tubo Turks and other countries. But this is only a small number of people. And among these people, who can really understand some exquisite trade? Besides, the best and most popular things in the Tang dynasty are tea leaves, silk and ceramics. But these things are basically in the hands of a small number of people. Think about it. When the time comes, the Tang dynasty is bound to start the age of navigation. At that time, how can these little things meet the needs of the foreign people? How can the Tang dynasty really become a prosperous country? So there's only one word. The Tang dynasty is poor." Chapter 627. Yu Shinan was a little confused. What this kid said was wrong. Everything he said was correct. Basically, there was one thing in many things nowadays, and that was the wine. If everyone could open up this kind of brewing technique, Wouldn't everyone be able to live a good life? But it was easier said than done. Could it be that this kid wanted to? Kid, are you saying that you're going to hand them all over the place in your academy? And the forging technique of the invulnerable shield and the invincible spear that you mentioned before? Yes. Zhang Feng slammed the table, and then picked up his wine glass and clinked it with Yu Shernan and Fang Xianling. Then he said, actually old Fang knows my plan. Brother Bashi, you don't know yet, right? Let me tell you a secret. Don't tell anyone else. Seeing Zhang Feng pull him up, Fang Xianling couldn't continue sitting there. He whispered in Yu Shernan's ear, you should have heard of this thing called the mysterious scripture, right? This kid knows this stuff. Moreover, it is said that Mozi and Lu Ban comprehended part of it, and that's why they were able to comprehend that kind of strange skill. You don't know that the previous strategy against the Turkic Tubo and the other countries, and the lifting of the blockade at Guanlong, were all made by this kid. Yu Shernan couldn't help but think highly of Zhang Feng again. You mean this thing was made by this kid? Fang Xianling glanced at Zhang Feng and said, not only that, the cooperative and the fine salt that you praised so much were also made by this kid. What? This time Yu Shernan finally couldn't sit still. He had always thought that this was made by the emperor and several state dukes. But he didn't know that these things, from politics to national policy to business, were all made by this kid. He finally understood why Li Shimin and the others respected Zhang Feng so much. Thinking of this, Yu Shernan stared at Zhang Feng and asked, if that's the case, then the beer and barbecue on the market were all made by you? Zhang Feng shrugged. Not only that, your favorite bone-strengthening powder was also made by this kid. Fang Xianling directly told Yu Shernan everything that had happened. Yu Shernan was so shocked that his mind was in chaos. The strategic planning of the nation, the things in the business world, and the lewd tricks, all of these were created by this kid? Was he even human? How was this possible? He couldn't link all of this to Zhang Feng. If it weren't for Fang Xuanling's words today, he would have thought that the locust-controlling stuff and the Nyang bone-strengthening powder were all Sun Simiao's doing. Right. Speaking of the locust-controlling stuff, it seemed that this kid was also the one who made it. Otherwise, if he had a way, Dr. Sun wouldn't have hidden it for so long. And there would be rumors about it in the outside world. What kind of freak was this kid? Had he really read that amazing scripture? Su Rian and the others had never seen that amazing scripture, but this thing had been widely circulated. At that time, it was rumored that Confucius got the amazing scripture and created the Book of Songs. Later, Mencius, Lao Tzu, and the others became the greatest Confucian scholars one after another. After that, although this amazing scripture was widely circulated, it had never appeared in the world again. Yu Shernan couldn't help but feel a little restless at this time. Who wouldn't read the amazing scripture? My young friend, what are the subjects in your academy? Finally, Yu Shernan asked the question in his heart. Hearing that, Zhang Feng said, in reply to Mr. Bo Shi, my White Deer College's main subjects are the three-character classic, the Book of Songs, and mathematics. Poems, books, etiquette, and other things are supplementary. Among them, there are physics and chemistry. These things are the foundation of my academy, so only a very small number of amazing geniuses are qualified to sign contracts and study them. And among them, it includes the production and research of the textile machine that can be controlled and weaved day and night. There's also the research of the stainless steel, which is to make an impenetrable shield and an invincible spear. You should have heard that Old Qin is setting up a car factory and a shipyard. These are the most sophisticated things. When the time comes, they will be researched in a place that I named the Research Institute. The others can also learn some basic things. There are also military studies, medical studies, business studies, forging, manufacturing, brewing, and other professions. Finally, I will temporarily set up 3 factories on Shao Mountain. One is a steel factory that specializes in mass production of shields, spears, crossbows, and so on. Another one specializes in brewing the tires of iron carriages and war chariots. The last one is the textile factory I mentioned just now. On one hand, it's to provide them with a lucrative career. And the other reason? It's also because they are poor. If you want to run this big academy, you will need a huge amount of money, so... Zhang Feng said everything that he wanted to say in an eloquent manner. However, he didn't explain what those subjects were. However, business studies, medical studies, and other skills were nothing more than craftsmen. Yu Shernan knew a little about them. Not to mention the skills of a chef. He had tasted Zhang Feng's skills when he was in the palace. He also knew a little about the brewing industry. However, there were only 4 subjects. He couldn't understand. Chapter 6:28. Little friend Zhang Feng, this old man knows about mathematics. I've also seen it in Lao Li's house. However, this old man still doesn't understand physics, let alone chemistry. Can you explain it to this old man in detail? Yushernan's curiosity was piqued. He knew a little about physics as well as the magical division and multiplication table. He also learned some things from his conversation with Du Ruhui. Du Ruhui, who mastered this thing, was actually able to handle the complicated matters of food distribution, registration, storage, and so on. How shocking was this? If it was an ordinary person facing thousands of people coming to buy food or exchange food every day, wouldn't it take dozens of people to handle it? This could not help but highlight the power of mathematics. But what was physics? Although he had heard of it, what he heard was definitely different from what Zhang Feng said. Zhang Feng also knew that Yushernan would ask this. He deliberately dragged it out and said, "Old man Bosher, actually this is the highest level of mathematics. For example, if an illiterate person doesn't even know how to read, how can he learn the book of songs?" However, when Zhang Feng saw the displeasure on Yushernan's face, he hurriedly said, "The so-called physics is actually studying something. For example, how to use the power of nature to transport water to a mountain instead of using manpower. Also, how to make a caddy of iron and a caddy of cotton fall from a high place at the same time and land at the same time, etc. These are all more profound things. They all require the foundation of mathematics to be able to calculate things. Isn't this what the fraud is studying?" Yushernan instantly lost interest. "What about chemistry? What's that?" Zhang Feng was a little speechless. At this moment he did not know how to explain it to Yushernan. There was no way to explain it. How to explain it? After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng said, "Do you still remember the thing I mentioned just now? My research institute is to study how to let the people eat their fill, wear warm clothes and have a warehouse full of food. Also about the ship." "Oh right, old Feng, have you told this to Mr. Bosher?" Fang Xianling shook his head. "I haven't told him yet. This thing hasn't been done yet. How can I tell him? But now that you've said it, I'll tell him, okay?" Fang Xianling pursed his lips and told Yushernan everything about the shipyard, the sea silk road and the car factory. Yushernan was dumbfounded. Especially the kind of iron ship that didn't need manpower to paddle and could move the ship. What kind of thing was that? This was something he had never heard of. What was this? This was the real lewd trick. Compared with the craftsmen who called themselves strange masters, if this thing was really built, the Tang dynasty would really enter the golden age. Plus, there would be endless food, those looms, and the invincible spears and crossbows. Although Yushernan did not agree with war, the foundation of a country was its military. If there was no strong military, how could the safety of the people be guaranteed? Zhang Feng, this brat, simply included everything from military to business to agriculture. Yushernan did not dare to think about it. He hurriedly asked, "Young friend, what you said, is it chemistry?" "Yes. These things, whether it's physics or chemistry, are all called science. But it's still too early to talk about these things. You can just think of it as fun. This thing still needs time to be revealed. People in this era did not understand these things at all. They did not even have the basic common sense of life. If you said too much, people would only think you were crazy." But the reason why Zhang Feng told Yushernan at this time was that this guy was the most representative Confucian scholar of the Tang dynasty. His academy needed such a person to hold the fort. Otherwise, Zhang Feng would not have bothered to say these things. After all, if he said it too early, people would only take it as a book. Only when he said it at the right time could it have an unexpected effect. Yushernan also understood Zhang Feng's meaning. He nodded and said, "Don't worry. I understand what you said. But what's the matter with the military? Could it be that you want to train soldiers?" This was also what Yushernan was most puzzled about. Compared to science, that stuff was like a divine object that couldn't be found anywhere. But what about military? He instantly thought of the dirty scene in the garrison camp outside Chang'an City. This was simply like the difference between heaven and earth. How could it be possible to combine these two things that were originally completely unrelated? Moreover, it was in White Deer Academy? In fact, the military was also the purpose of Fang Xuanling's visit today. He was very worried that once this thing was revealed, it would inevitably cause ripples in the imperial court. At that time, it would not be a simple problem of the academy but a political problem. Fang Xianling patted Zhang Feng's shoulder with a serious face and asked, "Fengzi, you have to think about it. Once this military course is revealed, do you know what the consequences will be? And military studies, isn't it just reading books? Could it be that you want everyone in White Deer Academy to study the art of war?" Chapter 629. Not to mention Yushernan, even Du Ruhui couldn't help but worry. The military and the academy had always been at odds with each other. Otherwise, the civil and military officials wouldn't have fought against each other in the cottage. But what was Zhang Feng trying to do now? Was he trying to combine the two into one? How was this possible? There was always a taboo for soldiers, and that was to be involved in politics. It was the same for politicians. But what Zhang Feng was doing now, wasn't it? The two of them didn't dare to think further. That was why Fang Xuanling's expression suddenly changed. He was worried that if the imperial court knew that Zhang Feng's White Deer College was like this, it would become the target of the entire Tang dynasty. At that time, even if the emperor wanted to resist, it would be impossible. But Zhang Feng didn't seem to be worried about this. Instead, he waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about this, Mr. Bosher. Old Feng, you can rest assured. Do you think I'm stupid? How can I teach this to just anyone? Same old rules. To put it bluntly, this thing isn't made for ordinary people. Do you think this thing is made for ordinary people? Wrong. I made this thing for people who are prepared, like Tainyo and the other extremely talented people." Fang Xianling seemed to understand, but Yu Shernan really didn't. Actually, from the very beginning, when he heard these brats talk about an impenetrable shield and an invincible spear, he had always felt a faint sense of worry. If you said that this thing was serious, it was really a serious problem. If you said that it wasn't serious, it wasn't a problem at all. Just as Zhang Feng said, Cheng Chumo and the others were born in the military. Take Wei Zheng's son, Wei Shuyu and Fang Yai for example. At this time they were all holding important positions. But which hot-blooded youngster wouldn't be attracted to studying or practicing martial arts? At this moment, Zhang Feng also gave an answer. Some people are obsessed with one thing the moment they are born. Or maybe they were influenced by their parents and chose their own path. Or maybe they were inspired by the heroes in the streets and yearned for the heroism of soldiers on the battlefield. And there are even more people who are addicted to books, unable to extricate themselves. For example, dabbing. Old Fang, you should be able to understand why he is so obsessed with books, right? You're always running around outside, doing housework and even working hard outside. When you return home, you'll pressure and criticize them. You must stand out. Of course, I'm not saying that your concern is wrong. It's just that you've been instilling things into your son for a long time. Have you ever thought about your son? As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. In the long run, their character will be determined from a young age. And my White Deer College can solve this problem from the root. First, from the moment you enter the college, if you don't have the ability, you should build a shelter for yourself. Lao Tzu doesn't want such a bookworm. The other type of person is the arrogant type. Lao Tzu will grind them until they don't even have the courage to raise their heads. This is a form of training. I once read a sentence in a book. A flower in a greenhouse will never be able to withstand the wind and rain. On the contrary, a person who has been exposed to the wind and rain for a long time will desperately want to climb up. What I want to do is to let the flower in the greenhouse have some time to grow. As for the person who has been exposed to the wind and rain for a long time, I will suppress the desire in his heart. So, young friend, you mean? Bosher finally couldn't take it anymore. Although what this brat said was right, but this was really long-winded. He couldn't take it anymore. Everything Zhang Feng said seemed to have no basis, but it was just right, especially the sentence, "One is marked by the company one keeps." This was something that even the great Confucian scholars of this era couldn't fully understand. He could actually say something like that. Yu Shernan couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for him. As for the military concept that Zhang Feng talked about, Yu Shernan also started to look forward to it from the bottom of his heart. Yu Shernan couldn't help but ask again, "Young friend, what you said about one is marked by the company one keeps. Where did this sentence come from?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. He scratched the back of his head, unsure if Yu Shernan actually didn't know about this. But when he saw Yu Shernan's expression, he said, "Isn't this a sentence from Jin Fu Xian's The Proclamation of the Crown Prince? Don't tell me Mr. Bosher doesn't know? This was a famous sentence from the ancient times. He actually didn't know? A great Confucian scholar of this era didn't know? How could this be?" When Yu Shernan heard this, he narrowed his eyes and thought for a long time. He had read Jin Fu Xian's The Proclamation of the Crown Prince, and so on. But this was the first time he heard of this. But all of a sudden Yu Shernan thought of something. That was the well-read Chu Suiliang. He didn't know where this guy was there such a rare book? He heard that this guy had been reading all kinds of unique books for the past 2 years. Could it be that this book was also unique? Otherwise, why hadn't he heard of it before? Chapter 630. However, Yu Shernan faintly felt that he had been led astray. After thinking for a while, he could not think of a single clue. He glanced at Fang Xianling and saw that Fang Xianling was not surprised. He could only temporarily suppress the doubts in his heart and asked, "Little friend, Do you mean that you want to educate them from their roots? Yes. Zhang Feng slapped his thigh and once again thought of a famous saying, Mr. Bosher, some people are great in life. They don't have to worry about tomorrow since they were born. They can live a life of luxury. But they don't think that sometimes, a meal or a drink is the dream of a poor student. Zhang Feng pointed to the meat and wine on the table and said, take the food on our table for example. This table is worth at least 100 coins, right? If it was in the hands of a rich family, it wouldn't matter. Isn't it just 100 coins? But have you ever thought that this 100 copper coins might be a harvest that a poor family wouldn't even dare to dream of in a year? Not to mention eating and drinking. If this trend continues for a long time, it will inevitably cause a catastrophe. Yu Shernan and Fang Xianling heard this and could not help but ask in unison, what catastrophe? In their view this was just a normal thing. Zhang Feng lightly pointed to the door and said, people have dreams. Just like how we think when we see such a table of delicious food before we go to school. It's bound to be. One day in the future I will eat meat and drink wine like this. Isn't this normal? Yu Shernan and Fang Xianling did not understand what Zhang Feng wanted to say. But after hearing this they thought about it and nodded. You're right. This is a normal reaction. But don't say it. This shouldn't be, right? Zhang Feng sighed and put the wine cup on the table. He stood up and shook his head with his hands behind his back. Wrong. Big and very wrong. In fact, this thing is called a dream. And there is another saying, it is called desire. Human desire is a terrible thing. Once it takes shape, this thing is enough to destroy a family, a city and even a country. This time. Yu Shernan and Fang Xianling really understood. If they still did not understand at this time, then there was really a problem. Previously, when Zhang Feng had not mentioned it, they had thought that it was something that humans should have. But at this time, when Zhang Feng said this, they carefully thought about what Zhang Feng said today. Yu Shernan could not help but ask, Zhang Feng, little friend, you mean you want to use military training to temper these people's temperament? Zhang Feng gave Yu Shernan a thumbs up in approval. Yes, that's my goal. Think about it, many of these people might enter the imperial court and become officials in the future. I don't want to be criticized behind my back when the time comes saying, Ayaya, look, this corrupt official is from the White Deer Academy. What is this? You are destroying your own reputation. And more importantly, you have seen the situation in the Tang dynasty now. The 3 lives and 6 ministries system, plus the system of recommendation for the imperial examination, basically, many talents are in the hands of those big families. And here I am equivalent to a clear stream, not mixed with any interests. I only care about how many people I train. Under the premise of no interests, how can I not train the next generation of qualified successors? Yu Shernan heard this. He was a little touched. But more than that, he admired him. He stood up and bowed to Zhang Feng like a Confucian scholar. Zhang Feng was so surprised that he hurriedly stood up and bowed back. Yu Shernan let out a deep sigh. Presumably this is all your military knowledge, right? Although Yu Shernan pointed it out, Zhang Feng's face didn't turn red at all. After all, if Yu Shernan, a great Confucian scholar, didn't think of these things, then Zhang Feng doubted whether his reputation in this lifetime was exaggerated. Yes, Mr. Bosher is right. These things are actually called psychology mixed in every curriculum. And in military these things are called psychological tactics. Think about it. Now, there are so many countries around the Tang dynasty. In the far west, there is the black-clothed Abbasid Caliphate, which is not inferior to the Tang dynasty, and some countries are even more powerful than the Tang dynasty. What I need is the skill sand table training, the ability to go to the battlefield to kill the enemy, and the ability to subdue the enemy without fighting under the condition of being familiar with military books. This? Yu Shernan smiled bitterly and interrupted Zhang Feng's endless speech. Young friend, don't say any more. Old man doesn't understand these things and he doesn't want to understand them. This old man knows that this is your ability and old man can't probe into it. But there is still a trace of confusion in my heart. I wonder if young friend can solve it? At this time, Zhang Feng was a little drunk. Obviously he talked too much. At first, Yu Shernan didn't notice, but now the more Yu Shernan listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. If he continued to talk, it wouldn't be a discussion of academics, but a discussion of military books. This was a taboo in literature. So he could only stop Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng choked for a moment. He wasn't angry. Waving his hand, he sat down again, clinked his wine cup with Yu Shernan and said, Mr. Bosher, please ask. Yu Shernan then said, Old man has always been curious. Young friend, who is your master? Zhang Feng had long known that he was going to ask this question. After all, he had already thought of a set of excuses for this matter. Zhang Feng sighed, looking a little lonely. After 3 cups of wine he said, "Let's not talk about this for now. Let's talk about something else." Chapter 631. Yu Shernan almost sprayed a mouthful of wine on Zhang Feng's face. "You waited for a long time. That's all you said? Who dared to do this in the Tang dynasty? Except for the emperor, there were only a few people who dared to do this." However, Yu Shernan couldn't find any sign of anger. After all, it was a big taboo to rashly ask about someone's master. Zhang Feng was lucky that he didn't get angry. Although he knew that Fang Xianling had told him about Zhang Feng's master, he couldn't resist his curiosity. He could faintly hear the 8-front formation and the Zhuge legacy from it. However, he wasn't sure. After all, he hadn't studied this kind of military book. However, at this time, seeing Zhang Feng's lonely look, Yu Shernan knew that he couldn't ask. He could only go to Fang Xianling and ask, "Brother Fang, this..." Fang Xianling looked at Zhang Feng and then looked at Yu Shernan and said, "In fact, I forgot to tell you this. This guy once said that he had cultivated on Wutai Mountain for 5,000 years and that Zhuge Kongming was his disciple." At first, Old Man also thought that this guy was talking nonsense, but now, Old Man felt that this guy's words could be combined with something in military books. Could it be? Shu. Yu Shernan's expression changed drastically upon hearing this. He hurriedly covered Fang Xuanling's mouth. "Brother Fang, you actually believe such a preposterous excuse? This is just this guy's nonsense. Although this is the first time I met this guy, although he is reliable, his mouth." Fang Xianling sighed and nodded. "This is all because of this guy. If he could have a family, he wouldn't be so lonely. This guy was once hit hard. His family was originally a rich family in XX place. Because of a mountain flood, the whole family died. If he was a normal person, he would have done something." Yu Shernan fell silent. He finally understood why this brat was so out of tune and why he talked so much nonsense. This was all caused by loneliness. Yu Shernan couldn't help but sympathize with Zhang Feng. "Young friend, Old Man knows that you're not feeling well, but people need to look forward. Think about it. Once your academy becomes famous in the Tang dynasty, won't you also have a meteoric rise? When the time comes, the proper thing to do is to help your Zhang family flourish." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He looked suspiciously at the 2 old fellows who were whispering to each other, wondering what they were talking about. However, he didn't want to listen to the whispers of the 2 old men. Borrowing Yu Shernan's words, he sighed and raised his cup to drink. Fine. Old Fang usually looked like an honest person. Who would have thought that this support would be so beautiful? However, Zhang Feng's face was still full of bitterness and hatred. He said, "Isn't that so? That's why I spent all my life learning and all my wealth to establish this White Deer College. That's why I thought that if I could pass the imperial examination 3 years later, I could enter the imperial court and take this opportunity to create more talents for the Tang dynasty. But, alas." Zhang Feng said a few words but didn't know what else to say. He sighed deeply. After a while, he continued, "I know what old Mr. Bashi is thinking. Actually, let me tell you this. The psychology I mentioned just now is just a support. The real driving force of this academy still needs some foundation. For example, the training of these people's temperament is undoubtedly the kind of military training." Yu Shernan and Fang Xianling looked at each other and asked in unison. "Military training? Is it the kind of drill in the military now?" Zhang Feng shook his head and said with some disdain, "Those are just the fighting skills of children. I don't want to learn from them. The military training I mentioned is a complete system, including physical training, resistance to beatings, fatigue resistance, and even the ability to react in severe fatigue, etc. Those who can get through this stage, no matter if they are in the military, politics, literature, or business, at the very least, they will have a good physique and a good temperament. Those who do not have a strong temperament will be automatically eliminated in less than half a month. Do you think I'm really stupid? There are so many people who need to eat. Where can I get food for them? This way, I can let the flowers in the greenhouse have a chance to be tempered by the storm. As for the ordinary people, I can show them the hardships and sufferings of climbing up. This way they won't go astray on the road of life." Zhang Feng used about 4 hours to tell Yu Shernan the complete content of the military training, as well as its benefits. Yu Shernan, on the other hand, was initially disdainful of Zhang Feng and somewhat resistant to his long-winded speech. Gradually, he was shocked by Zhang Feng's understanding of human nature. This was what truly shocked him. In the beginning, Yu Shernan had looked down on Zhang Feng, but in the end, he had taken the initiative to ask questions. Gradually, he had come to understand the situation. From today onwards, this kid was talking about military science. However, this also made Yu Shernan a little shocked. This was military science? If one had to make a comparison, the things that were popular in the military now were simply bullsh*t. If His Majesty knew about this military philosophy, how would His Majesty react? Chapter 632. Finally he took the bait. Zhang Feng cheered in his heart. But at this time, Zhang Feng knew that it was the real beginning. After all, it was easy to persuade a great Confucian to come to the academy, but what about 3 great Confucians? Was not enough. Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask again with a bitter face, "Mr. Bashi, what do you think of my academy?" Yu Shernan shook his head with a wry smile. At the beginning this guy wouldn't say a word of praise, but now? After showing all the good things, what could Yu Shernan say? He also wanted to see what Zhang Feng's academy could do, but at this time he couldn't praise this little guy. He had to give him a warning. Yu Shernan stroked his beard and pretended to be deep in thought. "Your academy is not bad. It's just a little unorthodox. Also, it's just a hodgepodge. There's nothing new about it." Zhang Feng's eyes widened. "It's okay? Damn it. If you have the ability, go to the Tang dynasty and find me an identical one. Believe it or not, if you can find me, I'll ask for that person's WeChat and Weibo accounts." In this era, there was no one else who could have such advanced ideas except for people like him. And such an advanced education idea was a perfect teaching method that was implemented in almost all schools except the aristocratic schools. Military training. Although Zhang Feng didn't know the purpose for the time being, it might not have much effect in the future, but in the Tang dynasty, its meaning was very different. This was a turbulent era and someone might make trouble for you at any time. What's more, in history the Turks would really break with the Tang dynasty next year. The peace that Li Shimin exchanged with his white horse on the bank of the Wei River only lasted for more than a year. But at this time, even with his intervention, although the situation was reversed, would Li Shimin give up fighting the Turks? No. After all, the humiliation he had suffered at the hands of the Turks was something that no one would ever forget, needless to say Zhang Xian. Furthermore, Zhang Feng had been to the reclining house and learned from the veterans what the military training in the barracks was like. After all, the Chang'an Navy was in Chang'an City, which could be seen from afar. That was simply pushing him to his death. What kind of training could a chaotic battle in a bandit's lair produce? According to Zhang Feng's knowledge, the Tang dynasty lost at least several thousand people every year, sometimes even tens of thousands of people. How did these people die? Wasn't it just a chaotic battle, coupled with military measures that didn't have the slightest bit of hygiene habits that killed them? However, none of this could be seen in White Deer College. He didn't have much hope that he could completely change the military camp. Besides, he didn't have the ability to do so. What he wanted to do was to start from White Deer College and transfer the disinfection of alcohol and the routine military training to the Tang dynasty. He wanted the academy to blossom in all aspects, be it moral, intellectual, physical, or aesthetic. This was the flower that he had mentioned to Yu Shernan before, the foil that he needed. At this time, when he heard Yu Shernan's evaluation of him, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel anxious. After all, this was his blood, sweat, and tears. He had basically dug out all his foundation, but in return he was only told that it was okay? No way. This was definitely not okay. I say, Mr. Bosher, although my academy doesn't have a collection of books now, Lao Li owes me a collection of prefaces to the Orchid Pavilion. Also, I have arranged for Li Gan and the others to search for a large number of rare ancient books. Also, I still use the conventional teaching methods such as the Book of Songs. Don't think that I only teach a little here. Moreover, the teaching time here is rationalized. In the morning, the military training begins at 5 in the morning. After that, there will be 2 hours of recitation of the Book of Songs and so on. After that, there will be a quarter of an hour break before teaching mathematics. After that, there will be a 2-hour break. The afternoon is divided into 3 segments. The first segment is the literature class of the 100 schools of thought. Then there's the common sense elective courses such as medical theory and general knowledge, as well as the detailed division of manufacturing and military affairs. In the evening there will be military training. If you still think that these are not enough, then this kid really has nothing to say. Although Yu Shernan was already extremely shocked, after exchanging glances with Fang Xianling, he forcibly suppressed his shock and said, "What you said is only your appearance. Don't you know about specialization?" This kid knows. Military training is to train their physique in the morning and at night. After high-intensity training in the morning, their nerves will be tired. If they read aloud at this time, it will be easy for them to remember. In the afternoon, it is the most drowsy time of the day. If you ask them to do things that require high concentration at this time, they will be pressed to the extreme. In my opinion, it is much better than rote memorization. The more Zhang Feng spoke, the more he felt that he was being polite. Yu Shernan was also deeply attracted by Zhang Feng's teaching philosophy. He was looking forward to what kind of breakthrough the new teaching model would bring. After all, many people had been taught by him. However, Yu Shernan still maintained a look of disbelief on his face. He shook his head. However, without waiting for him to speak, Zhang Feng directly spread his hands. If you don't believe me, why don't you come to my academy? It will only take a month. If you don't see any results, this kid will immediately close the academy. If this kid is lucky enough to satisfy Mr. Bosher, then would you like to stay? Chapter 633. Yu Shernan and Fang Xianling were so shocked that their jaws almost fell off. So, after saying so much, he just wanted Yu Shernan to come to the academy? And he even made the bet in such a roundabout way? When he heard that Zhang Feng wanted to do a medical trial and heard that the miracle-working Dr. Sun Ximiao was on the mountain, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. But Zhang Feng didn't give him a chance at all and just made the contract? Wasn't this forcing a deal? Yu Shernan looked at Zhang Feng, who glanced at him from time to time. He was angry and amused at the same time. If you want to invite me to the academy, you have to say it clearly. What are you doing? Yu Shernan heaved a sigh. Well, if I had known, old man wouldn't have come here today. Now I've gotten myself into trouble. Alas, old man thought you were doing something. It turns out that you've been digging a hole for old man. Although Yu Shernan looked angry, he didn't feel anything in his heart. If he didn't want to go, he could stand up and walk out. But he didn't. After all, Zhang Feng had really drawn out his gluttonous bug. After thinking for a while, Yu Shernan said, well, since you've made the bet, if old man breaks the promise with your ability, the whole Chang and city will know in less than 2 hours. Zhang Feng's eyes lit up when he heard that. Hey, what are you talking about? Am I Zhang Feng that kind of person? Fang Xuanling's mouth twitched. He coughed and turned around. He couldn't bear to look. Now he really knew Zhang Feng's ability. They hadn't done anything yet, but he had already won over Yu Shernan? This was a literary titan that even the emperor had to deal with carefully. He, in such a short period of time, this little demon. Fang Xianling couldn't help but write down Zhang Feng's bad habit of digging holes in his notebook. He had to go back and study it. Otherwise, when he sold him, he would still happily count the money for Zhang Feng. But at this moment, Zhang Feng's words made Fang Xuanling's hand tremble. He almost threw the wine glass away. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands and looked at Yu Shernan, saying, Mr. Bashi, don't worry. You will see results within a month after the academy opens. Old man doesn't care about these things, but I heard that the scenery of Mount Shao is unique, and there are caves and waterfalls accompanying it. What kind of residential area are you building there? I heard that the house is not bad. Prepare a big house for the old man facing the waterfall. Okay. Don't worry, I will get you the best place. Zhang Feng immediately agreed. Now that Yu Shernan had won over, Zhang Feng's heart was as sweet as honey. However, he rubbed his hands and asked, but Mr. Bashi, I heard that you, Chu Suiliang, Elder Chu, Ouyang Sun, Elder O, and Shui Jiha, Elder Shui. Stop. Yu Shernan couldn't help but explode. So you, kid, are not only lusting after me but also want to take these old bones into Mount Shao? What do you think you have in Mount Shao? If it was just him, then Yu Shernan would have considered it as a favor to Li Shimin and would have also come. Moreover, he also didn't want to miss out on this opportunity. But now, he actually wanted to trap his 3 good friends in? How could that be possible? Yu Shernan stood up, his face gloomy. Kit, don't go overboard. Do you know who the 4 of us are? If it weren't for your poetry collection, the old man wouldn't have come to see you. As a junior, he agreed to go to the academy because of the novelty of your academy. You actually hit the snake with the stick and want them to come? Yu Shernan was so angry that he laughed. Then show me what you're really capable of. That's right, I remember that the previous Dragon Boat poetry meet was cancelled due to various reasons. If you want the 3 of them to come, then show me what you're really capable of. The Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet is a grand event that gathers all the literati in the world. When the time comes, I will also be participating. If you're really capable, then let those 3 old fogies come to you during the poetry meet. As they spoke, Yu Shernan had already walked to the door. However, at the door Yu Shernan paused and looked at Zhang Feng. He said meaningfully, the old man thinks highly of you. Zhang Feng was speechless. How the F***ck could this be? However, wasn't it just a poetry meet? Just nice, Lao Tzu would make a pot of stew for him. He was just worried about not having a teacher. He even sent this to me? Good. At that time, there will be so many poems from the Tang and Song dynasties. I don't believe that I will lose. Alright. Thank you for your kind words. I will definitely be there on time. However, Zhang Feng's eyes turned and said, Mr. Bosher, why don't I give you 2 jars of wine? Yu Shernan, who had just walked out of the door, heard this and could not help but pause again. He seemed to hesitate. However, in the end, his rationality was defeated by Zhang Feng's wine. Yu Shernan sighed and said, Is the old man the kind of person who is greedy for wine? If you really want to give him, why not give him 10 jars? Okay. Chapter 634. Yu Shernan felt that he had been played by this kid again. However, he couldn't detect any abnormalities. In the end, he could only shake his robe and leave. As soon as he turned the corner and walked out of the crooked neck of Tonghui Lane, Fang Xianling couldn't help but ask, Brother Yu, what do you think of Zhang Feng? He can take on great responsibilities. However, this kid is too bad. We have to be careful. Yu Shernan's words basically judged Zhang Feng. However, at this moment Yu Shernan said again, Actually, old man really hopes that those stubborn old men can come to the academy. This kid isn't simple at all. He was able to perfectly assemble so many things that seemed to be disorderly and even unrelated to each other. This is really beyond this old man's expectations. Moreover, this kid isn't bad. That's the most important thing. Fang Xianling finally relaxed. Brother Yu, you don't know. This kid is brainless and straightforward. He says whatever he wants to say. However, this kid knows a lot, so he can. Yu Shernan smiled bitterly and shook his head. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that the academy's matters are too serious, old man really wants to be friends with him despite the difference in age. However, what scripture did that person say is true? At this moment they were outside and there were many eyes and ears. Therefore, Yu Shernan could only ask about the mysterious scripture that he had heard from Li Shimin. Although he really wanted to ask in front of Zhang Feng, he still gave up in the end. This was originally a simple matter. He didn't want to turn it into a transaction. However, he really wanted to know about the mysterious scripture. In his conversation with Zhang Feng, he had a feeling that the so-called science, physics, psychology, and military were actually the mysterious scripture. This was what really attracted Yu Shernan. If those 3 old fellows were to find out about this matter, then with their tempers, not to mention not asking for money, even if they had to pay for it, they would still go to White Deer Academy. Yu Shernan was well aware of how attractive that thing was. Although there were very few people who knew about this thing, as long as they knew about it, which one of them wouldn't scramble like a flock of ducks? However, Yu Shernan did not do so. After all, he felt that this kid had set a trap for him today. He felt uncomfortable and disgusted. If news of this were to spread, Yu Shernan would still have his face? However, Fang Xianling didn't think so when she heard this. At this time, Fang Xianling was deeply shocked. In Fang Xuanling's memory, there were no more than 5 people who could receive such an evaluation from Yu Shernan. Today he actually witnessed it with his own eyes. Although in their eyes, Zhang Feng didn't need Yu Shernan's affirmation. He had already grown to the point where he could compete with the great Confucian. Moreover, Zhang Feng's current identity was also a great Confucian. However, his reputation was still not enough. However, if news of him being able to receive Yu Shernan's affirmation were to spread, it would also create an extremely good opportunity for Zhang Feng. In the end, the moment Yu Shernan entered the palanquin, he looked in the direction of Tonghui Lane and sighed. I've heard that there are great people in the marketplace. I didn't expect that the old man would be able to witness it with his own eyes. His life was not in vain. On the other side, after sending off Yu Shernan, Zhang Feng was indeed excited for a long time. After all, being able to win Yu Shernan's heart was already a pleasant surprise. He was thinking about how to find a master to ascend the mountain earlier. He didn't expect that old Feng would send Yu Shernan to his door. What was this? He was just dozing off and someone automatically sent him a pillow. However, it was only one person. Although Yu Shernan didn't say it directly, Zhang Feng's intuition told him that Chu Suiliang and the others seemed to know him. That would make things easier. He just didn't know how many poems he said when he was drunk last time. Zhang Feng couldn't help but secretly regret. He felt comfortable acting tough, but now he felt uncomfortable. How could he act in the future? After all, the poems that he knew and remembered the deepest were only the 300 Tang poems. There were also the Song poems and the poems after the Tang dynasty that he dared to use. But even so, the poems that he knew were only a few hundred. If he were to encounter such a situation in the future, what would he do? No, he had to find a good time to ask Laoli how many of these poems he leaked out. Otherwise, it would be awkward if someone used his poems to show off during the poetry gathering. However, this was the next step. After all, there were still 27 days before the Mid-Autumn Festival. Now that the matter of the teacher had been resolved, all that was left was to make teaching aids. With this thought, Zhang Feng hurriedly tidied up the pub and then ran to Cripple Wang's place. After all, he was familiar with Cripple Wang, and Cripple Wang was a veteran. In this Chang and city, whether it was black or white, Cripple Wang and the others still had some ability. Although Li Gan had already taken care of some of the things, there were still some things like test tubes that had to be found on their own. After all, in this Chang'an city, he hadn't seen many skilled glass craftsmen. For this, he had to recruit someone. Then, if he could build a glass factory on Shao Mountain in the future, it would be wonderful. Chapter 635. Giddy up. Giddy up. Giddy up. Just as Zhang Feng plunged into the veteran's lair of the reclining square, 10 fast horses suddenly rushed into the gate of mind. When the 10 fast horses entered the city gates, they did not show any signs of slowing down. From afar, everyone could clearly see the bright yellow flags on the backs of the horses. They were messengers. Any citizen of the Tang dynasty could not recognize the county magistrate or the city gate guards, but they had to remember the messengers of the Yellow Gate. This was because these messengers were usually dispatched for economic and military affairs or important matters. Under these circumstances, any citizen, no matter what they did, had to make way for them. Even if you were the crown prince, the grand tutor, or even a first-class official, you had to obediently make way for them to reach the emperor. There was no choice. This was the iron law of the Tang dynasty. At this moment, when everyone saw that there were actually 10 small yellow flags at the city gate, they couldn't help but be shocked. They hurriedly made way for the city gate, and even the city guard opened the city gate in an instant. Giddy up. The shouting along the way resounded throughout the peaceful Chang'an city. The angry shouts continued all the way to the Vermilion Bird Gate without stopping. The leader of the Yellow Gate took out a strong crossbow that he carried with him. There was even a small bag hanging on the crossbow. He aimed at a wooden pillar on the city gate and shot it. Then, without stopping, he shouted, "Quickly open the city gate." Economic and military affairs. The city guard hurriedly took off the brocade bag. After seeing the contents, he hurriedly shouted, "Open the gate quickly." In the muffled sound, the 10 riders rushed into the imperial city without slowing down. Then they rushed all the way to the Taiji Palace where Li Shimin was. Report. Economic and military affairs. Economic and military affairs. Before they reached the Taiji Palace, the leader of the Yellow Gate hurriedly took out a waste token. But here they could not rush in like this. They would only face the strong crossbows of thousands of Jinwu guards. The leader was Yuchi Gong's son Yuchi Baolin. He was a man built like an iron tower, and no one dared to say a word when he stood at the entrance of Taiji Palace. Yuchi Baolin took the medallion and examined it. Then he searched them and hurriedly brought them to the imperial study. Without waiting for Yuchi Baolin to report, little Gizi, who had been waiting here for a long time, indicated for him to leave. He then led the group through a small yellow door into the imperial study of Taiji Palace. Li Shimin seemed to have long known about the matter of the little yellow sect charging into the imperial city. Such a thing had only happened once during his reign, and that was the time when the old thief Sheli had besieged the city. For things to turn out this way, it was clear that things were not simple. Li Shimin waved his hand with a solemn expression, stopping Xiao Huangmen from kneeling. "Speak." Xiao Huangmen's cracked lips were covered in blood. He knelt on one knee and shouted hoarsely, "Reporting to the emperor, Long Yu Dao has an urgent report. Recently, the people we planted in Tubo have sent back a message. Please take a look, Your Majesty." As he spoke, Xiao Huangmen's hands trembled as he took out a letter covered in blood and handed it to little Gizi. When little Gizi saw this, he did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly handed this blood-stained letter to Li Shimin. Xiao Huangmen continued, "Your Majesty, at this time the border between Long Yu Dao and Tubo has already erupted in chaos. Even Tubo's refugees have been raiding our Long Yu Dao for a long time. Even Tubo's army had raided a small town on the border 5 days ago. Even large-scale civil unrest has erupted in Tubo's territory. At this time, the civil unrest in Tubo has faintly formed a huge force." Following Xiao Huangmen's introduction, Li Shimin had also finished reading the letter. Actually, the contents of the letter were not much different from this. It was even more accurate. Rather than civil unrest, it was more accurate to say that it was a change caused by the famine caused by the plague of locusts. What was mentioned in the letter was far more than what Xiao Huangmen knew. There were at least 100,000 people involved in the civil unrest. Most importantly, from the initial lack of food, there was a phenomenon of cannibalism in Tubo. This was terrifying. When faced with such a situation, Tubo could only do one thing, and that was to suppress it. This was the cause of this tragedy. It was the same for Tuyuhan. Li Shimin suddenly thought of something and asked, "Is there any news from Jianan Dao?" "Your Majesty, the envoy from Jianan Dao is waiting outside the door." "Come in." Li Shimin waved his hand. In an instant, the remaining 9 people hurriedly entered the imperial study. Once they entered, they hurriedly knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, there is an urgent report from Jianan Dao. Yongchang, Yaozhou, Kuan Prefecture, and the neighboring Yazhou Prefecture have successively encountered an influx of refugees from Tubo. A large number of soldiers have even participated in the plundering. Min Prefecture, Hezhou, Yaozhou, and the other places of Guanyi Dao have also been plundered many times. The local garrisons have requested to go to war. There is a report from Yuzhou that the Turks have recently made unusual military movements. It is suspected to be related to the civil unrest in Tubo." Listening to the reports one after another, Li Shimin's eyes suddenly emitted a murderous intent. He was also ambitious. This was heaven's will. If he could make use of this opportunity to take down Tubo and Tuyuhan, then... Chapter 636. Li Shimin had long wanted to take action against Tubo, an uncertain factor. But because of some things, Li Shimin could only put it aside for the time being. But now, this was God's will. Did God want him to subdue Tubo? Thinking of this, Li Shimin waved his hand and interrupted everyone. "Present all the memorials. I'll decide on the specific matters after tomorrow's court meeting." After everyone left, Li Shimin carefully read the documents one by one and then asked, "Xiao Gizi, do you think it's okay to send troops now?" Xiao Gizi was stunned. It was the first time the emperor had asked him this question. Xiao Gizi thought for a moment and then said, "Your Majesty, if we send troops now, we don't have any justification. I think it's okay to first deploy troops in these places that are often robbed and then station a large number of troops to guard the market." Li Shimin was silent. "Tell Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, Qin Xiong, and the others to come quickly." "As you wish." Li Shimin was very conflicted. Looking at the territory of the Tang dynasty in Tubo, which was deep in the Tang dynasty, he really felt more and more uncomfortable. If he could take this opportunity to directly eradicate Tubo, it would definitely be a magnificent feat that would make him famous for 100 generations. Didn't the old stubborn people in the court say that he didn't have any great achievements during his reign? If he took down Tubo, just as Li Shimin was getting more and more excited and wished that he could directly lead the troops to kill Tubo, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin walked into the imperial study with Qin Xiong, who was relatively smaller than them. "Old General, Subordinate General, Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and Qin Xiong, pay respects to your Majesty." Several people's voices interrupted Li Shimin's imagination. "Dear ministers, please take a look at these secret reports." Li Shimin pointed to several secret memorials on the table. The 3 of them accepted the order and went forward to check them. However, at this time the 3 of them frowned deeply. Even Qing Yaojin, whom Li Shimin had been looking forward to, was frowning at this time. "What? Is there anything wrong with this secret memorial?" Li Shimin was a little angry. When Qin Xiong heard this, he looked at the 3 of them and said, "Your Majesty, this secret memorial is very detailed, but I feel that it is a little unusual." "Your Majesty, I also think it's a little strange. Logically speaking, if such a big thing really happened in Tubo and they really couldn't defend it, they would definitely come to the Tang dynasty for help. But until now no one has come. It doesn't make sense. How could they not know what the emperor meant? To be able to know at the first moment, and then not be in a hurry to discuss countermeasures, but to summon the generals in Chang, and the meaning was self-evident. The emperor wanted to go to war. However, when the 3 of them said this, Li Shimin was even more determined to go to war. "If we go to war with Tubo and Tuyuhan now, what do you think our chances of winning are?" The 3 of them were shocked. Was the emperor determined to go to war? Qing Yaojin pondered and hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, I remember that Fengzi once said that now is not the time to send troops to Tubo." Li Shimin interrupted Qing Yaojin a little irritably. "I know this, but now is a heaven-sent opportunity. If we don't seize this opportunity, the Turks' garrison in Yuzhou has shown signs of a large number of mobilization. It seems to be related to Tubo. If we miss this opportunity and let the Turks invade Tubo, the Tang dynasty will be in danger. Your Majesty, we can't think of it this way. If we send troops now, we are bound to encounter the Turks. At this time we will have to face 3 formidable enemies who are covetously eyeing us. Your Majesty, this is no small matter. If we make a move now, it will definitely affect the whole situation. No, the whole situation will be in chaos. They are already dissatisfied with the things we have just taken control of. If we send troops now, what will the people of the world think of us? We don't have a good reason to send troops. The three of them spoke one after another and directly rejected Li Shimon's words. At this time, Li Shimon was also a little hesitant. He waved his hand in annoyance and said, "You can leave first. Let me think about it." The three of them looked at each other and then slowly left. As soon as they left the imperial study, the three of them could not help but look serious. There was an important factor that they did not mention just now, and that was the lack of food. The army was now short of food and could only eat 2 bowls of porridge every day. If they went to war now, how could they fight? When it came to war, the three of them had never been careless. However, even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. They were not Zhang Feng, who could conjure something out of thin air to add to the pot. They were all uncouth people. If they put those poisonous things in, it would be a big problem. "The three of you, are you going to the imperial study?" Just as the three of them were walking out of Taiji Palace with worried expressions, they happened to bump into Fang Xianling, who was just about to go see Li Shimon. The three of them sighed. They nodded in a muffled voice. Qing Yaojin said in a muffled voice, "At this time, I advise you not to go see His Majesty." Fang Xianling heard this and smiled confidently. "Is it because of that tubo thing?" When the three of them saw Fang Xuanling's expression, they couldn't help but look at each other. Then Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong picked up Fang Xianling and said, "Elder Fang, let's go, let's find a place to have a good chat. We have encountered some troublesome matters." Chapter 637. Between the Taiji Palace and the political announcement hall, there was a barbican. At this time, in a small room in the barbican, Qing Yaojin and the others pulled a discontented Fang Xianling to sit at a square table. Fang Xianling was somewhat resistant to the strong smell of fox, sweat and fleas on their bodies. However, he also knew why the three of them had brought him here. However, he also had something important to report to the emperor, so he no longer acted reserved and directly asked, "Why did the three of you bring this old man here?" This was the armaments department, which was the territory of the military department. Coming here at this time meant that the three of them had encountered a big problem. Along the way, he heard that the little yellow door went straight to the imperial palace, so he faintly guessed that this matter was definitely not ordinary. Hearing Fang Xuanling's question, Qing Yaojin and the others didn't pretend. The three of them were straightforward people. Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong and Qin Xiong looked at each other and said, "We just went to see the emperor. The emperor is preparing to tubo." While speaking, Qing Yaojin's right hand gently drew a line across his neck. How could Fang Xianling not know what this action meant? Moreover, the emperor already had that intention. But why did he choose this time? He clearly remembered that when the emperor talked about this matter last time, Feng Zi clearly told the emperor that this was not a good time to start a war. What's going on? Fang Xianling couldn't help but feel anxious. What's going on? The Tang dynasty is lacking everywhere. Although it's a bit better, it's not a good time to use force. And what's going on here? Before Qing Yaojin could speak, Yu Qigong sighed and said, "Old Fang, this matter is a bit complicated. If you choose Longyu, Jianan and Guanyi, as long as it's close to Tubo and Tubo, you'll basically be harassed every day. Even Tubo's soldiers will participate in the plundering." Fang Xianling turned pale with fright and hurriedly asked, "This is impossible. How is this possible?" Qing Yaojin forced a smile. "When people are hungry, they will even eat mud. Besides, it's not like you don't know that the last locust plague came from Tubo and other places, right? Think about what happened to the Tang dynasty and think about the Tubo dynasty." Hearing this, Fang Xuanling's face suddenly changed. He muttered, "Could it be that Tubo?" "Yeah." Yu Qigong patted Fang Xuanling's shoulder and said, "Our Tang dynasty has Zhang Feng, so we've been dealing with the locust plague since the beginning. You should know about this, right?" Fang Xianling fell silent. Indeed. In the beginning, when Zhang Feng said that there would be a plague of locusts, no one took it seriously. Otherwise, they would have started stockpiling food and then slowly started to control the plague. However, in the end it still caused serious consequences, not to mention Tubo. The drought. Then came the locust plague. Although during this period the Tang dynasty did make a lot of money, it also added fuel to the fire in Tubo. Although this was all a strategy. At this time, after the incident broke out, Fang Xianling still felt that it was inconceivable. What was this? This was national policy, but if war broke out at this time, then, before Fang Xianling could figure out what was going on, Qin Xiong, who had been silent all this time, slowly said, "Not only that, according to the reports of spies, at least thousands of people starved to death in Tubo and Tuyuhun every day, and there were even cases of cannibalism. As for the survival of the people, The leaders of the two countries did not have a good solution, so unprecedented civil unrest broke out. According to the secret memorial, at present, the total number of people in the two countries is more than 100,000. Also, according to the news from General Li Jing in Yuzhou, spies in Yuzhou found that a large number of Turkic soldiers showed signs of mobilization, suspected to be directed at Tubo. Elder Fong, think about it, if the Turkic army went south to take Tubo, what would happen? Yes. Fang Xianling could not help but be shocked. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He wanted to leave in a hurry, but before he could leave, Qing Yaojin pulled him back and said, "Don't worry, this war won't happen." Of course, they knew what Fang Xianling was going to do, but how could they let Fang Xianling go at this time? Qing Yaojin was fine, but Qin Qiong and Yu Qigong were not in Chang'an often. They finally caught Fang Xianling, who had just returned from the tavern. How could they let him go so easily? Moreover, they had been rejected 3 times when they went to the tavern. This morning they learned that this guy actually took Yu Shernan to see Zhang Feng. What was he doing? How could they not want to know what Zhang Feng wanted to do? After all, the magical sabers, spears and shields that the guy mentioned were treasures. However, at this time, it was Fang Xuanling's turn to be confused. "Why do you say that this war cannot be fought?" Qing Yaojin said with a wry smile, "The army is short of food. How do you think this war can be fought? Do you want the soldiers to go to the battlefield with empty stomachs?" Fang Xianling was stunned. However, after thinking about it, now that there was a shortage of food everywhere in the Tang dynasty, it was possible that the army was short of food. He could not help but nod and say, "You're right. How about old man go to see his majesty first and then we'll talk later?" No, old Fang, you know that we are always away from home. It's not easy to find something good, so we want to talk to you. It's not urgent to see his majesty." Chapter 638. Yu Qigong rubbed his hands and pressed Fang Xianling onto the bench. "Actually, we have to start with Zhang Feng. I heard that he has an invulnerable shield and an invincible spear. I also heard that this kid established an academy in that godforsaken place, Shao Mountain." Fang Xianling didn't know what these 3 uncouth men wanted to do, so he nodded suspiciously. "That's true. Then do you know if that kid is making those things?" Fang Xianling shook his head. "You know that houses are being built in Shao Mountain. How could he have time to do that? Moreover, if brother you didn't go there today, that kid might not have told us how to make an invulnerable shield and that magical teaching philosophy." Yu Qigong couldn't help but be curious. He had also heard of the teaching philosophy that Zhang Feng had spread out before. It was just that he had forcefully applied all the things that were common among the people. Was this magical? Yu Qigong couldn't help but ask, "Isn't it just some little tricks? Is it worth it?" "Little tricks?" Fang Xianling glanced at Yu Qigong and said, "If I told you that Feng Zi has a set of military knowledge that would make you jealous, would you believe me?" Military knowledge? The 3 of them weren't interested in other things. After all, they were in the army. However, they couldn't help but be attracted by the word military knowledge. Moreover, it was a magical military knowledge. The 3 of them asked again in unison, "What kind of military knowledge? Isn't it just training soldiers, studying sand tables and then familiarizing yourself with military books?" Fang Xianling shook his head with a look of disdain. He rolled his wrinkled eyelids and said, "Vulgar. Do you think this academy is just a drill ground? Forget it. Since we're all officials in the same court, old man will tell you about Zhang Feng's military knowledge today." The military knowledge that Zhang Feng talked about, in his own words, is that if he can only teach those boorish soldiers, then his academy should close down. Because those people don't deserve to go to his academy. Qing Yaojin's eyes flashed. He suddenly thought of something that Qing Chimo had told him when he went back. It was about heavy cavalry, light cavalry and assassins. Could it be, this kid was going to do this? Yu Qigong and Qin Qiong, who didn't know this, were confused. They looked at Fang Xianling and Qing Yaojin, who was so excited that his beard was twitching, and asked, "Old Hey, do you know something? What is this kid doing? Didn't he say he wanted to open an academy? What are you doing? Why are you doing this now?" Fang Xianling knew that Qing Yaojin remembered something. He didn't say anything and only looked at the 3 with a smile that wasn't a smile. Fang Xianling felt a sense of satisfaction that he had never felt before. At this moment he finally understood why Zhang Feng liked to speak like this every time. It was simply too satisfying. Qing Yaojin really didn't want to tell this to these 2. Otherwise, with their temper, wouldn't they tear apart Zhang Feng's skinny body? However, he couldn't stop the 2 of them from pulling at each other, so he said in a muffled voice, "I heard my Chumo say before that Feng Zi wants to turn Chumo into a heavy cavalry. I want to pass through tens of thousands of troops and no one can stop me. Fang Xianling looked at Qing Yaojin with some surprise. This guy actually knew how to argue? But after thinking about it, he understood. It must have been Du Go and the others. Otherwise, with his temper, he wouldn't be surnamed Cheng if he could say something good. But that wasn't important. From Yu Qigong and Qin Xiong's open mouths, it could be seen that these two were the most shocked. But Qing Yaojin didn't intend to let it go. Instead, he patted the two's shoulders worriedly. Originally, this was too shocking. I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid you'd be scared to death. But since you insist, then I won't pretend anymore. I'll tell you everything. Fang Xuanling's mouth twitched. But he still suppressed the disgust in his heart. He also wanted to see the expressions of these two war gods when they heard the last part. Presumably, that would be the real satisfaction. Yu Qigong was obviously shocked. He was so excited that his voice trembled. And then? Old hey, you motherfucker, hurry up and say it. Do you believe that Lao Tzu won't beat you up if you keep being so wishy-washy? Qing Yaojin spread his hands and pretended to be in a difficult position. But when he saw that the two were clenching their fists, he hurriedly said, "Good friends, you know that Zhang Xuan's son, right? That guy likes to pretend to be Zhao Zilong all day long. Feng Zi wants to train him to be a light cavalry that doesn't leave a trace for thousands of miles, and the kind that's as fast as lightning. Especially Wei Zhang's son Wei Shiyu, that bastard. Do you know what Feng Zi wants him to do? Mother***, say it. Do you want to be beaten up?" And then? Yu Qigong and Qin Xiong couldn't sit still anymore. Zhao Zilong. Who was that? That was the war god of a generation. Those two pieces of news were like two muffled thunder that kept ringing in their minds. And now, this bastard actually said that there was more. And it was Wei Zhang's son. Heavens. Aren't you a little too much? That Wei Zhang is fair and clean, but his son is stubborn. To think that my two sons, Yu Qigong, have always been cautious and conscientious. Why can't they do it? Why is it the two of them? Chapter 639. Yu Qigong was furious. He felt wronged. And Qin Shubao felt the same. But just when their nerves reached the limit, Qing Yaojin said slowly, "Zhang Feng wants the boy from the Wei family to be an assassin, someone even better than Jing Ku." What? What does he want to do? Damn talent. Let's go. Old Black, go up the mountain and get him into the military camp. It's a waste if such a talent doesn't go to the military camp. While speaking, Yu Qigong got up and pulled Qing Yaojin away. Fang Xianling, who was watching the show, couldn't sit still. He hurriedly held the two men down, his eyes red with anxiety. "What do you want to do? This academy is registered in the Ministry of Revenue. If you dare to do this, you'll have to face the wrath of the Emperor. And Old Black, you know what to do, don't you?" Fang Xuanling's warning instantly extinguished the restlessness in the hearts of Yu Qigong and Qin Xiong. They anxiously pulled their hair. Talent? This was a talent? 100 years? They hadn't seen such a talent in 1,000 years. Not to mention the **T military science. Just based on what Old Black said just now, they knew what it would mean if this matter was spread out. At this time, seeing the two anxious, Fang Xianling slowly stroked his beard and said, "Old man knows what you want to say, but this academy is the Emperor's idea. You should know how important this academy is to the Emperor. And the reason why Chang and City is what it is today is because of Feng Zi's own money. He distributed 20,000 don of grain on this deserted mountain, so that the grain shortage in Chang and City could be controlled." Yu Qigong was stunned. He knew about this, but he didn't expect that this boy did all this. Isn't this the Crown Prince's idea? How did this boy named Zhang Feng get the credit? Qin Xiong was a little confused. What was all this? He had just returned to Chang and City out of curiosity about the academy. However, he had learned that the academy was established by the Crown Prince and managed by a genius from Chang'an. Moreover, the rumors that were spreading like wildfire were all from White Deer College. It would be better if the Crown Prince was the one behind it, but why did it sound like the Crown Prince wasn't the one behind it? If that was the case, then this kid, who was he? Seeing Fang Xianling and Qing Yaojin like this, Qin Xiong couldn't help but be even more confused. "Elder Fang, can you tell me what's going on? This kid called Zhang Feng, is he really so miraculous? Magical? Let Lao Tzu tell you. Are all the soldiers in your camp eating fine salt now?" Qin Xiong didn't know what Qing Yaojin wanted to say, but he still nodded subconsciously. "Yes, that's right. What do you think of this thing?" Qing Yaojin knocked on the table. "Old hey, if you have anything to say, just say it. Why are you blabbering here? You're acting like a woman. What's wrong with this fine salt?" "That's right, I use this thing to brush my teeth every day. Don't tell me you're the one who made this thing?" Yu Qigong was also furious. He wasn't a good-tempered person to begin with. He couldn't stand being watched by Fang Xianling and Qing Yaojin. Seeing that he was scared, Qing Yaojin looked at him with disdain. Vulgar. Fine, I won't tease you anymore. This salt was created by Zhang Feng. Also, didn't you keep thinking about the method to deal with the Tubo Turks in the other countries? Who came up with it? Yuchi Gong's eyes widened. Are you going to say that this was all created by that bastard? Qing Yaojin nodded in front of Yuchi Gong's shocked eyes. Yuchi Gong only felt waves of pain in his head. His head hurt. It hurt a lot. Damn it, how could such a talent be wasted like this? No, he had to get this kid in his hands. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to sleep well. Yuchi Gong felt as if a piece of his flesh had been bitten off. He had only heard about the weapons and shields in the past, but what about now? The salt and the schemes were all created by this brat. How could the impenetrable shield and the spear be fake? Whoever told him that these were fake, he would definitely break that person's third leg. At this time, Qin Xiong was the same as Yuchi Gong. This time they came back because of the lack of food in the military camp. On the other hand, it was because of this impenetrable shield and this miraculous spear. This matter had already become a legend among the upper echelons of the military. At first, everyone just treated it as a rumor. But after meeting Qing Yaojin, he couldn't help but be surprised. This thing was actually real. But now, after hearing what Qing Yaojin and Fang Xianling said, he felt terrible. This was real. This was all real. It seemed that this time, no matter how big the riot at the border was, even if the Tubo and the Turks' allied forces were, as long as he had this shield and spear, he would not be afraid. What was there to be afraid of? Chapter 640. Yuchi Gong and the other man could no longer sit still. Right now, the military camp was short of food, and the situation there was precarious. A war could break out at any time. At this time, after confirming that Zhang Feng indeed had such a divine weapon, how could the two of them sit still? They grabbed Qing Yaojin by the back of his collar and hurriedly ran out. Fang Xianling saw this and shook his head without saying anything. After all, Feng Zi had already said this. It would be strange if these people could sit still. Moreover, military science was indeed of great importance. How could he sit still? He also hurriedly got up and went to the imperial study. Just as he walked out of the barbican, he bumped into Zhang Sun Wuji, Wei Zheng, and Du Ruhui. When the three of them saw Fang Xianling coming out of the barbican, they asked in surprise, "Master Fang Yu?" Fang Xianling stroked his beard speechlessly. "Yuchi Gong just took me inside." Their expressions became strange, but they didn't say anything. Zhang Sun Wuji cupped his hands and said, "Let's go. I know you're also going to the emperor. Let's go together." Fang Xianling was surprised. "Why are you going to the emperor's place?" Zhang Sun Wuji glared. "You don't know? We just received news that the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun have entered the city. You don't know?" How could Fang Xianling know this? He had just come out of Zhang Feng's little tavern and bumped into this fool. Now that he bumped into these three, how could he know? Fang Xianling cupped his hands. "Let's go. We'll talk as we walk. Master Zhang Sun, are the envoys from Tubo here because of the internal strife?" Zhang Sun nodded with a serious expression. "Yes, it's because of this. But just now, old man saw old Black Cheng and the other two leaving the palace in a hurry. What's the meaning of this?" Fang Xianling sighed. "Your Majesty wants to start a war." "What?" The three of them heard this. He couldn't help but be shocked. The emperor actually wants to start a war? Start a war? How is this possible? Does His Majesty not know the current situation of the Tang dynasty? How could they start a war like this? When the three of them heard this, they knew that this matter was indeed serious. They stopped talking and hurried to the imperial study. Before the group of people could report to the eunuch at the door of the imperial study, Xiao Gizi hurriedly indicated for them to enter. Li Shimin had been waiting in the imperial study for a long time. As soon as the four of them entered, Li Shimin asked directly, "Now, what do you think about Tubo's matter? Should we start a war or not?" When Fang Xianling heard this, he hurriedly bowed and said, "Your Majesty, this is a serious matter. This old subject just met General Cheng and the other two. From their conversation, I learned that the army is seriously short of food. Many soldiers only eat 2 bowls of porridge every day. Under such circumstances, they don't dare to go to war. Moreover, without military supplies, how can we start a war? Besides, if we force ourselves to go to war, it will inevitably lead to a strong counterattack from the Tuyuhun, the Turks, and even India. We've lost God's will." Li Shimin was angry. He threw the secret letters in front of him to the four of them. "This is the intelligence sent by the spy just now. I'm sure you know the situation in Tubo and other places. Moreover, Tuli has transferred 100,000 elites from the Yuzhou garrison to the western region. I don't need to say anything about this, do I? If we don't start a war now, do you want to wait until the Turks invade Tubo before going to war? Li Shimin was angry. Wei Zheng and the others couldn't help but be shocked by his insistence on starting a war. Wei Zheng hurriedly said, Your Majesty, although we can go to war now, we just received a report that Tubo and Tuyuhun's envoys are about to enter Chang'an City. It seems that they are here to ask for help. Moreover, it's not appropriate for us to go to war now. Li Shimin frowned slightly. They came at this time? Li Shimin's eyes could not help but flash with killing intent. If they wanted to come, why would Tubo delay until now? Why did they only come now? What did this mean? It meant that they were afraid that the Tang dynasty would suddenly send troops at this time, so they wanted to find out the situation and ask for help from the Tang dynasty. This was really a good plan. At this time, Li Shimin's desire to start a war was slightly weakened. It would be better if Tubo didn't send people, but now that they came, he couldn't help but have some concerns. He knew that this was a stalling tactic, but Tubo was obviously on guard against the Tang dynasty. This was really despicable. On the one hand, they made trouble at the border, and now they were on guard against the Tang dynasty and came to ask for help. Damn it. Seeing that Li Shimin didn't speak, Wei Zheng continued, Your Majesty, the most important thing now is to see what Tubo wants to do. As for the war, the Tang dynasty's situation really doesn't allow us to start a war. Once we start a war, the lack of supplies will be completely exposed. At that time, Li Shimin heard this. He couldn't help but clench his fists. But how could he not know this? Alas. Li Shimin sighed and said, Forget it. Let's see what they say tomorrow morning. You can all leave now. Chapter 641. Dong? When the clock struck the third time at 5 o'clock, the clock slowly rang. A sharp and cold voice sounded in the political announcement hall. The emperor has arrived. As the voice fell, the officials hurriedly bowed and shouted in unison. Welcome, Your Majesty. Under everyone's surprised gaze, Li Shimin slowly walked up the 8-step stairway to heaven. He sat on the dragon throne and waved his hand indifferently. At this moment, Li Shimin's condition was not good. After all, no one would be in a good mood after a night without sleep, let alone Li Shimin, who was about to be removed from his heart. Li Shimin's red eyes swept around indifferently. Then he said indifferently, Do you have a report to present today? Your Majesty, this old official has a report to present. The moment Li Shimin's voice fell, Wei Zheng hurriedly stepped forward. Li Shimin waved his hand. Wei Zheng then said, Your Majesty, yesterday the envoy from Tubo Naritu and the envoy from Tuyuhun Zhaku have already settled down in the Honglu Temple. They are now outside the palace asking to see Your Majesty. What are they here for? Your Majesty, do you still remember the drought and the locust plague in Tubo? Because of these two disasters, Tubo is now in the same situation as the Tang dynasty. They are extremely short of food, and it has become so serious that civil unrest has broken out. Li Shimin pretended to be surprised and looked around at the crowd. The crowd only cared about avoiding Li Shimin's gaze. Li Shimin could not help but secretly despise these people. In the end, Li Shimin swept his gaze over Yuchi Gong and the other two, asking, General Yuchi, is this true? Yuchi Gong reluctantly walked out of the queue and said, Your Majesty, what Prime Minister Wei said is true. Not only that, General Li Jing of Yuzhou has sent news that Tuli has dispatched 100,000 elites, but his purpose is not pure. According to the news from Longyu Dao, Longyou's border has often been harassed by Tubo's rebels and soldiers. They are so annoyed that many places in our Tang dynasty have been plundered. Thus, this old general believes that the Turks must have dispatched their troops to take down Tubo. Hearing this, all the ministers in the political announcement hall were shocked. What? The Turks are simply too ambitious. Your Majesty, send the troops. No. Right now, our Tang dynasty is also extremely short of food. If we send troops now, it will only bring a heavier burden to the people. When all the old ministers heard this, they could not help but burst into an uproar. There was no other way. If the Turks really sent troops to take down Tubo, then wouldn't the Tang dynasty be in imminent danger? If they did not send troops now, then Tubo would definitely not be able to stop the Turks. Because of the Tang dynasty's plan against Tubo, they would lose all their property in Tubo. How could they not be anxious? But once they sent troops, then the consequences, who would dare to think about it? Therefore at this time, everyone fell into an endless struggle. Li Shimin was annoyed and snorted coldly. In an instant, everyone's discussion came to an abrupt end. Dear ministers, what do you think now? This time, Tubo must have come because of the 100,000 Turks. Do you think we should help them or not? This Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and the others were silent at this time because they already knew the result of this matter, but the emperor was now testing them. He wanted to test the foundation of these old guys. Sure enough, after a while of hesitation, the minister of the Ministry of Works said, "Your Majesty, this matter needs to be discussed again. Our Tang dynasty is suffering from a food shortage at this time, so it's not good to mobilize the troops. Then let me ask you, once the Turks send troops, what should we do?" That person was speechless. At this time, the officials who had prepared some words could not help but swallow back their words. That's right. If we don't help, then once the Turks take down Tubo, the door of the Tang dynasty will be completely open to the Turks. At that time, the Turks will come and go as they want, and we will not be able to do anything to them. What should we do? This is a serious problem. At this time, another official said, "Your Majesty, even if the Turks really take down Tubo, it does not mean that they will attack our Tang dynasty. Moreover, now that the Turks are also suffering from a plague of locusts, they should be more in need of food than our Tang dynasty. Cattle, sheep, and horses are almost out of food. How can they have the energy to start a war?" Li Shimin wanted to kill someone. However, he still suppressed the impatience in his heart and asked, "Tell me your opinion." Hearing this, that person said, "In fact, to put it bluntly, this is all because of the lack of food. Even if they can start a war against Tubo, in the end, both sides will suffer in the end. Moreover, Tubo does not have food at this time. In this way, even if they take down Tubo," without waiting for him to finish, Li Shimin speechlessly interrupted this stubborn old man. "I know what you mean." Then Li Shimin rubbed his forehead, looked at Wei Zheng and said, "Prime Minister Wei, you said that Tubo's envoys are here?" Wei Zheng cupped his hands and said, "They are here, waiting for the summons outside the hall." "Summon them?" "Yes." Hearing this, Xiao Gizi waved the whisk in his hand and shouted in a sharp voice, "Summon Tubo's envoys Nari Tu and Tuyuhan's envoys Zhako." Chapter 642. Summon Tubo's envoy Naoritu and Tuyuhan's envoy Zak. Summon. The Imperial Guards passed the Imperial Edict one by one. A moment later, two people in Tubo's distinctive costumes hurried into the political announcement hall. Unlike the previous court meetings, the two envoys lowered their posture and bowed as soon as they entered the political announcement hall. They did not dare to look at the faces of Li Shimin and the others. After taking 10 steps into the political announcement hall, the two of them stopped and bowed in the etiquette of the Tang dynasty's officials meeting the monarch. They said, "Tubo's envoy Naoritu and Zak pay respects to your Majesty Tang emperors." Li Shimin waved his hand faintly as if nothing had happened. "Dispense with the formalities. Come and sit down." As Li Shimin's voice fell, the little eunuch hurriedly brought 2 futons and placed them on both sides of the center of the hall. After the two of them thanked Li Shimin, they sat down with trepidation. "For what reason have the two of you come to my great Tang?" Before the two of them could sit down, Li Shimin's voice made them hurriedly stand up again. Naoritu hurriedly took out a gilded letter of credence from his arms and said, "This is a letter written by Songtsen Gambu to your Majesty. I hope your Majesty Tang emperors can read it." Zak also hurriedly got up, took out a letter of credence from his arms, and handed it to Xiao Gizi. After a thorough examination of the martial arts, it was presented in front of Li Shimin. Li Shimin did not read the letter of credence immediately, because he knew that the content of the letter of credence was nothing more than inviting the Tang dynasty to send troops and so on. Li Shimin casually put the letter of credence on the desk in front of him, then put his hands on it. Instead, he looked at the two of them and asked, "What brings you here this time?" The two of them looked at each other. Only then did Naoritu say, "Replying to your Majesty, Tubo is in great trouble this time, so my king sent this humble subject to ask for help from the Tang emperors. I hope that your Majesty can give us some help for the sake of our friendship." "What kind of disaster did you encounter? If there is a food shortage, then you can go back. When you came to Chang'an, you should have seen that the Tang dynasty is basically the same as Tubo. You want to help? Just you wait." Sure enough, after hearing Li Shimin's words, Naoritu and Zak did not have any reaction. Instead, they were silent for a while before they said, "Your Majesty, we are also aware of the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Therefore we did not come here to ask for food or anything like that. Instead, we are here to ask your Majesty to send troops to suppress the rebellion in the territory for the sake of the diplomatic relations between the two countries." Li Shimin's eyes flashed. His eyes flashed with shock. "Rebellion? Yes. Previously, because of the shortage of food, I am ashamed to say it out loud. The people in my territory are rebelling, and our army is short of food. It is really, not only that, now India and the Turks are eyeing us covetously. Originally, this humble subject was ready to leave a month ago. However, there is some unrest at the border now, so this humble subject can only return to Yunqing first and wait for your majesty to pacify the border before coming out. However, this rebellion is too rampant, so it has been delayed until now. Since force did not work, was he trying to use soft tactics? Li Shimin glanced at Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin. Qing Yaojin did not make a sound. Instead, he used his foot to stomp hard on Qin Xiong's instep. Qin Xiong groaned in pain. Li Shimin pointed at Qin Xiong and said, "Dear Qin Xiong, do you have something to report?" What could Qin Xiong say? If he could not understand this matter, then he would not be able to survive. Qin Xiong cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, this humble subject has received an urgent report from the garrison of Longyu and Jiannan. It is said that the places near Tubo and Tuyuhun have been plundered several times in this month. There have even been small-scale conflicts. Many people of the Tang dynasty have been killed and injured, and the number of people who have been plundered is no less than 5,000. Li Shimin heard this. He looked at Na Ritu with a dignified face and said, "This is the small conflict you told me about? What are my people of the Tang dynasty in your eyes? There is no need to talk about sending troops to help. I will give you 5 days to leave the Tang dynasty. Otherwise you will be arrested as Tubo spies." The Tang dynasty. Before Na Ritu could say anything, Li Shimin waved his sleeve. "Go. Do you think you can get me to send out my troops with just a few words? You must be thinking too much, right?" When Na Ritu and Zack heard Li Shimin's words, their faces changed greatly. They hurriedly knelt on the ground and shouted, "Your Majesty, this humble subject came here on behalf of our king. We are willing to sign a permanent vassal state with the Tang dynasty. Moreover, we will share all the military expenses and provisions for the Tang dynasty's help." What? He still has money and provisions? All the ministers were shocked. At this time, everyone felt more and more that this matter was unusual. Logically speaking, if such a thing really happened, they could resist it as long as they had provisions and supplies. Why did they need the Tang dynasty to help? If they had not heard Yu Qigong mention Tali's movements before, they would only think that there was something wrong with this matter. But now, Li Shimin and Wei Zheng looked at each other. A touch of surprise flashed through their eyes. He said lightly, "Are you sure about this?" Chapter 643. Na Ritu didn't understand Li Shimin's meaning and nodded. "This matter is written in the letter of credence." Li Shimin glanced at Na Ritu with a faint smile, then looked at Wei Zheng and the others and asked, "Dear officials, what do you think?" Wei Zheng's eyelids twitched. The emperor's heart is wild again. Does he really want to start a war? "Reporting to your Majesty, this old subject feels that we still need to discuss this matter. If we rashly send out troops, as the envoy said, India and the other countries are all waiting for us. If our great Tang sends out troops now, wouldn't that be the same as declaring war with India?" Du Ruhui and Fang Xianling also hurriedly bowed and said, "Your Majesty, please reconsider." Seeing that these people had spoken, the officials in the court also hurriedly shouted, "Your Majesty, please reconsider." What a joke. They had a large family and a lot of businesses. At this time, because they had opened up trade with Jinla, Tubo, and other countries, they had more businesses. If they started a war at this time, then, their losses would be really big. They didn't dare to say it before because these important people of the emperor didn't say anything. They didn't dare to be the first ones. But now that they had spoken, what should they do? They also hurriedly dissuaded. Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but frown. However, he also knew that this matter couldn't be rushed. He waved his hand lightly and said, "You can stay in the Honglu temple for the time being. I know about this matter, but this is a serious matter. Let me think about it first. After 3 days, I will give you an answer whether it's successful or not." Na Ritu and Du Ruhui heaved a deep sigh of relief after hearing this. They hurriedly bowed and then left. After the two left, Li Shimin also didn't want to continue the morning court. He waved his hand and Shao Gizi hurriedly said, "Court is dismissed." When everyone was slowly walking out, several little eunuchs called Wei Zheng and the others. When they followed the little eunuchs to the imperial study, Li Shimin was standing on the map and looking at it. When they entered the imperial study, Li Shimin pointed to the 2 open letters of credence on the desk and said, "Take a look at these 2 letters of credence first." Hearing this, they picked up the 2 letters of credence and read them. The contents of the letters of credence were more or less the same. They just wanted to submit and ask the Tang dynasty to send troops to help them to suppress the rebels in their territory and resist the strong enemies who coveted them. As for the last clause mentioned in the map, it was not mentioned in the letter. It only said that if it was possible, the envoys could choose the best one, and it would be considered as their king's permission. What a sly old fox. After they finished reading it, they couldn't help cursing in their hearts. Fortunately, the emperor didn't agree just now. If he did, then, it was this moment of hesitation that allowed them to save a large amount of military supplies. If what they said was true, their soldiers wouldn't have to go hungry anymore. After a quarter of an hour, Li Shimin slowly turned around and looked at the people with different expressions. He first asked Yuchi Gong and the other two, "Yuchi, do you three think we should fight this war or help?" Yuchi Gong hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Majesty, if we want to help, it's possible. We only need to send 100,000 well-equipped soldiers without provisions. If what they said is true, then we will have at least 100,000 on of provisions left for our army." "I'm afraid," Yuchi Gong paused. Seeing that Li Shimin didn't say anything, he continued, "If we want to fight, I think it's really not appropriate to do it now." "What?" Li Shimin asked. Yuchi Gong pointed at the map on the wall and said, "Your Majesty, please look at this map. If what the emperor said is true, then India and the Turks are attacking us from both sides. If Tubo asks us to help, they will definitely be on guard. If we take advantage of this opportunity to enter Tubo's rear and take Tubo, we will force Tubo into a life-and-death struggle. In this way we will be attacking them from three sides. The most crucial thing is that we don't have any provisions. If we fight, we will be in danger of being completely wiped out. If something happens to these 100,000 soldiers, the Western Gate will be completely lost." Li Shimin's eyes turned cold at Yuchi Gong's words. They couldn't fight. This was a rare opportunity. If they didn't fight now, they wouldn't be able to find another chance like this in the future. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Sun Wuji and the others and asked, "Minister Zhang Sun, what do you think?" What could Zhang Sun Wuji say? If they fought now, it would definitely harm others without benefiting themselves. However, the emperor's attitude was so firm that he didn't know what to say. Since the emperor asked, he could only bite the bullet and say, "Your Majesty, this old subject also thinks that we can help, but we can't fight this battle." Li Shimin was completely speechless. They couldn't fight all of them. Was the army he had deployed at Longyu Road just for show? He didn't dare to do this, he didn't dare to do that. What else could he do? Li Shimin was a little frustrated. He waved his hand and said, "You all are dismissed. Let me think about it." Chapter 644. Zhang Feng had been very busy these days. He was so busy that his heels were barely touching the back of his feet. He had found more than a dozen craftsmen to make an ordinary compass. They had talked until their mouths were sore, and they had even drawn the required items on a wooden board. The craftsmen were still not satisfied with the result. A few triangular boards were crooked. Zhang Feng had no choice but to spend a large sum of money to buy a batch of rice paper and cut it into the required size. Then he used a thin bamboo stick to burn it with an oil lamp to make a simple pencil. He used a small knife to sharpen it and mark it on the paper. It took him at least a day to make the templates for the triangular boards, compasses, and other things. He had wanted to make them out of iron or glass, but how could the craftsmen of this time do that? So, he could only settle for the next best thing. However, as he gave up again and again, these craftsmen, who were called the best carpenters in Chang and city except for the Ministry of Works, could not make them. At this moment, just as Zhang Feng was worrying, the housekeeper of the Zhang mansion knocked on the door of the small tavern in a hurry. "Son-in-law, son-in-law." Zhang Feng's face darkened when he heard that. But he still opened the door. "What's the matter? Call me Zhang Feng or Prince Zhang. Can you not call me son-in-law?" The old housekeeper smiled honestly. "Yes, son-in-law." Zhang Feng was speechless. "What's the matter?" "Old master heard that son-in-law is looking for skilled carpenters in the city, so he specially asked me to ask if you have found any. If you haven't found any, the Zhang mansion has taken in a carpenter who used to work for the Ministry of Works." Zhang Feng's eyes lit up when he heard that. The Zhang family had been operating in Chang and city for many years and had some contact with the palace. In terms of connections, they must be much better than those old soldiers. Plus, this person used to work for the Ministry of Works. What did that mean? Zhang Feng could not help but ask, "Where is this person now?" As he spoke, Zhang Feng hurriedly welcomed the steward into the house. When he saw the steward sitting down, the steward was so scared that his entire body was trembling. This was the Marquis who was famous in Chang, and at this time. How could the officials bear to be welcomed by the Marquis in person? He hurriedly sat down and said, "Young master, this old carpenter is currently renovating the old house in master's hometown, Lantian. If you think it's okay, I'll go to the old house and invite him over for you." No need, no need. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands. Lantian isn't far from Shao Mountain. How about this? I'll give you these blueprints. I'll have to trouble you to personally make a trip to Lantian and see if the old craftsman can make it. If he can, send him directly to White Deer College in Shao Mountain. If you can't do it, how about we think of another way? Then I'll go now. The steward hurriedly rushed out of the pub with the blueprint in his arms. Just as he was about to walk out of the tavern, he bumped into Li Shimin's arms. Li Shimin almost fell to the ground. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was also a little confused. He hurriedly supported Li Shimin and asked, Lao Li, why are you here? Don't you know the trick? Li Shimin took a breath and looked at the trembling steward and the things in his arms. His expression softened a little and said, I have to knock on the door to come here, don't I? Zhang Feng scratched his head. Li Shimin pointed to the steward and asked, This is, Steward Zhang is here too. Oh. Li Shimin didn't wait for Zhang Feng to finish his words. He gave a meaningful, oh, and then held a fist and palm salute to the steward and said, Then it's all right. Have a good trip. The steward shed tears of gratitude and hurried away. As soon as the steward left, Li Shimin sat on the stool and rubbed his chest. He asked, What's wrong with this old man? Why is he in such a hurry? I heard that you almost overturned Chang and city these 2 days and looked for carpenters all over the city. What? Zhang Feng pointed to the old steward. It's because I want to make some precision teaching aids. In such a big Chang'an city, I can't find a skilled one. Fortunately, the Zhang family learned about this and said that they took in an old carpenter who used to work in the Ministry of Works. They asked me if I wanted him. What kind of teaching aids are so difficult to make? As far as I know, the musical house in Chang and city sells all kinds of things. Li Shimin was confused. Zhang Feng shrugged and sighed. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. I haven't seen you these days. What have you been busy with? Isn't it because of the famine? A lot of people are starving. Have you solved it? Li Shimin smiled and shook his head. If it hadn't been solved, how could I come here to have fun? Zhang Feng nodded knowingly. Well, since you're here, I'll cook a tortoise for you today. Li Shimin's face turned green. Tortoise is a curse. And can it be eaten? Fengzi, are you cursing me? Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. Wait and you'll know. That thing is very nutritious. Li Shimin smiled speechlessly. Well then I'll wait. By the way, do you still have salt and pepper grasshoppers? Give me some. I'll drink first. There's a hidden compartment in the wine cabinet. Save some for me. There's only a little left. Chapter 645. Zhang Feng's tortoise had already been stewing in the pot for a long time. Therefore, it didn't take long for him to prepare 3 dishes and 2 soups in front of Li Shimin. The tempting aroma of the tortoise soup, coupled with the pepper and the taste of a green grass that Li Shimin didn't recognize, instantly made Li Shimin put down the wine bowl in his hand. He picked up the spoon, gently scooped up a spoonful of milky white soup and took a sip. Instantly, the strong taste opened Li Shimin's taste buds. This time, Li Shimin didn't say a word, which was rare. Zhang Feng could also see that Li Shimin had encountered something, but since Lao Li didn't say anything, he couldn't ask. He could only accompany Li Shimin. After all, he also had a basket of troubles. In the end, the meal was finished. Li Shimin touched his slightly bulging belly, smacked his lips and drank Zhang Feng's unique tea and said, Every time I come to your place, I feel that I'm still alive. Zhang Feng smiled. It seems like you've encountered something again? Sigh. Li Shimin sighed deeply. Isn't that so? It's all because of the drought. Zhang Feng was stunned. Could it be that it has something to do with the little yellow gate yesterday and the Tubo envoy? Li Shimin nodded. You still don't know, right? Because of the food shortage, there's now a civil rebellion in Tubo, which even lasted from Tuyuhan all the way to Tubo. I heard that the envoy brought news yesterday that as long as the Tang dynasty is near Tubo, it's been looted. You also know that after I started working with Zhenla here, the focus of my business is basically in Tubo. This time I've suffered a great loss. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be a little surprised when he heard this. However, Zhang Feng already had a premonition about this. After all, this rotten idea came from him. At this time, seeing Li Shimin like this, Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and smiled. I thought it was something big. Isn't this the one? Li Shimin's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This is a small matter? You don't know. Yesterday, I personally went to ask Lord Zhangsun about business matters. Guess what Lord Zhangsun said? According to the Lord Zhangsun, the Tubo's Tuli Khan has mobilized 100,000 elite troops from Yuzhou, while India is also eyeing covetously. The Tubo people are here to ask for help. So what? Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin indifferently, clicked his tongue and said, "For such a small matter, your hair has turned white again? Is it necessary?" Li Shimin was speechless. "I say, Fengzi, you really don't mind watching a show. I heard that the emperor wants to go to war. Why are you still making sarcastic remarks here?" Zhang Feng pursed his lips. "Who did you hear that from? Lord Zhang's son? Then you must have misheard. If you don't believe me, do you dare to make a bet with me? I bet that the emperor will not send troops." Li Shimin was stunned. His eyes flashed and asked, "Do you know that the emperor wants to take the opportunity to completely include Tubo and Tuyuhun into the territory of the Tang dynasty? And he doesn't want to send troops?" Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. He clinked his wine bowl with Li Shimin, picked up a golden grasshopper and said, "I'm also talking about this. I can guarantee that as long as the emperor is not crazy, he will never agree to this." "Are you so sure?" Zhang Feng didn't say anything. He just looked at Li Shimin with a smile. Li Shimin couldn't help but frown slightly. "What?" Zhang Feng was speechless. "You don't understand this? You're still a businessman." Li Shimin's face blushed. "How would I know such a big national issue? I'm a businessman. I only care about my business." Zhang Feng patted the oil and salt in his hand and said, "Well, I'll give you a lesson today. There's a reason why I said that this war won't be fought. Do you remember the way to deal with Tubo that I told you before?" Li Shimin thought for a while. In the end he shook his head. He really didn't know about this matter. He should have heard about it because he vaguely remembered that Zhang Feng seemed to have said it. But he was too busy and forgot about it. Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, "I'd like to hear the details. It seems that you really forgot about it." Zhang Feng sighed and continued, "Do you remember what I said when Tubo came to ask for a water wheel last time?" Hearing this, Li Shimin instantly remembered what happened last time. He nodded and said, "I remember, but this time is different. The Tang dynasty is on the side of the right time and the right place. Can you guarantee that the emperor won't send troops? And the Turks have this idea. If the Turks take advantage of the situation and invade, won't the door of the Tang dynasty be completely open?" Zhang Feng smiled. "You don't understand this, do you? When I said that we won't fight, I didn't mean that we won't help Tubo withstand the firepower. Let me ask you, if you want to buy a house and this house has just been burned down, will you buy it?" Li Shimin shook his head. "That's it. Now Tubo is equivalent to this house that has been burned into a mess in the fire. Now this person asks you to help him put out the fire. Are you going to buy it at the lowest price at this time? Or are you going to buy it when you help him put out the fire and let him repair it?" Chapter 646. Li Shimin naturally understood what Zhang Feng meant. However, this was an opportunity that couldn't be missed. If he missed this opportunity and gave Tubo a chance to struggle at death's door, he would still be an uncertain factor. There might even be some friction between the two sides. Thinking of this, Li Shimin asked, "Although the outside world knows this, you don't know about the problem at the border. If we can take it down in one fell swoop, although it's a bit shabby, at least we have a good reason to send troops now. But in the future then, don't worry about this. If the emperor doesn't have a problem here, he won't start a war now." Zhang Feng pointed to his head. Li Shimin was speechless, but he still asked, "Why do you think the emperor won't start a war?" "Because the emperor isn't stupid. You know the current situation of Tubo. It's so shabby. If we take over Tubo now, we'll have the right time, place and people. But the most important thing is that you have to feed them with food from your own pocket. Now, do you think the Tang dynasty has the ability to share the food in its mouth and feed the people in that large piece of land? Definitely not. And there's another important problem that you haven't thought of. I know what Lao Li is thinking. After all, your main business now is Tubo. You'll profit the most if you take over Tubo. But have you ever thought about the current situation of the Tang dynasty?" Li Shimin didn't even think about it. "There's a shortage of food." Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin on the shoulder. "Yes, there's a shortage of food. Think about it. Now there's a shortage of food everywhere in the Tang dynasty, let alone in the army. The army is basically stationed at the border of the barren land. Now Chang and city has just solved the problem of food and clothing. Do you think the barren land at the border will be better?" Li Shimin couldn't help but understand. Why would Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong and the others who had always been warlike retreat at this time? It turned out that they lacked food. However, Li Shimin still couldn't figure it out. He asked, "If we miss this opportunity, won't it be difficult for Tubo to fight again? After all, I heard that Tubo is here to pledge allegiance." "What is this?" Zhang Feng didn't even think about it. After all, there wasn't much in the future except for television. The more he saw, the more he understood. Although Zhang Feng didn't remember much about this kind of military novels, he could still vaguely remember some things about it. Zhang Feng thought for a moment and said, "Actually, this thing is very simple. If you really want to take it down, you can do it at any time." Li Shimin pursed his lips and looked at Zhang Feng rolling up his sleeves and putting his feet on the stool. It was obvious that this guy was about to start showing off. However, Li Shimin also wanted to know what this kid was capable of. Li Shimin took the opportunity to ask, "Then tell me, if this thing is over, how should we deal with it?" Zhang Feng heard this and patted Li Shimin's shoulder. "Lao Li, you don't understand this, right? Let me explain it to you. First of all, it's definitely not possible now. I said it last time and I'll say it again this time. When that piece of junk comes back, you'll have to mend it. Also, this piece of junk might not follow you wholeheartedly. It's like a dog that can't be fed well. What do you want it for? Then how do we deal with it? According to your method, won't it be even more difficult after this famine?" Li Shimin asked in surprise. Yes, yes, yes. Zhang Feng smiled slyly. "If I say you don't understand this stuff, then you really don't. If you say you don't understand, then why are you still talking here? Isn't it good to do your business properly?" Li Shimin's mouth twitched. "Isn't it because I don't understand that I have to ask? Otherwise, if there's a big change, won't my business be the first to be affected? When that time comes, I'll be easily affected and you'll also get less money, right? Also, you need money everywhere now." Li Shimin's words poked Zhang Feng's sore spot. Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh. "Ah? Look at you, why are you talking about this stuff out of the blue?" Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about this first. As long as I'm here, you'll be like the turtle in the pot, eating a weight, and you'll be safe." Li Shimin suspected that Zhang Feng was scolding him again, but he still couldn't find any evidence. At this time, Zhang Feng continued, "Actually, to put it bluntly, it's just that the Tang dynasty isn't strong enough. Look, from the current situation around the Tang dynasty, you can see this point. The Goguryeo in the north, the Sherwei in the east, the Japanese pirates, the Turks, and so on are all hidden dangers. Now there's also India. But these are all small problems, and the most important thing is still that dashi." "Dashi?" Li Shimin was dumbfounded. "What does this have to do with dashi?" Zhang Feng stared and said with a faint smile, "It doesn't have anything to do with it, but this is only temporary. After the meridians of the western regions are opened, the reputation of the Tang dynasty will spread far and wide. This dashi, which is on par with the Tang dynasty, will come to touch the Tang dynasty." Chapter 647. And there is a natural barrier between the Tang dynasty and dashi. Li Shimin narrowed his eyes. A map of the territory of the Tang dynasty instantly appeared in his mind. He said, "You mean Tubo?" "Yes. That's why I said it's not the right time to make a move. At this time, once we take Tubo, it will be easier to attack the city than to defend it. You know the current situation. If we recuperate while rescuing them and then spread out the spies we have in Tubo to form an intelligence network." Li Shimin was shocked. Based on the intelligence reports, the 3,000 or so people that had been sent out before had grown into tens of thousands. Furthermore, these people were all loyal to the spies. These 3,000 people were all distant relatives of the various high dukes. In terms of loyalty, there was generally no problem. But now, Zhang Feng was going to make a move on these spies? Finally, Li Shimin finally understood why Zhang Feng had planted so many spies so early and didn't intend to take Tubo in the end. It turned out that this was the reason. Li Shimin suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked, "Did you think of so many things from the beginning? Then you deliberately spread these 3,000 spies out, let them develop freely, settle down in Tubo, get married, and develop your subordinates?" Zhang Feng's face was a little red. "Oh, oh, more or less." Seeing this, Li Shimin, he couldn't help but be stunned. "How did you do it? How long has it been since the outbreak of the drought and we went to Tubo for help? And so many things have happened during this time. How can you calculate so accurately? And you can accurately predict that the emperor will really send out spies?" Zhang Feng pointed to his head. Li Shimin was speechless for a while. "Even if you were beaten to death, you would still ask, 'Fengzi, although what you said makes sense, there's still something I don't understand. Although this matter seems very reasonable, this is an outsider after all. What exactly is he thinking? None of us know." "Wrong." Zhang Feng interrupted Li Shimin and said, "Although the old saying is correct, those who are not of our race will have different intentions. Don't forget one thing, the principle that whoever has milk is the mother. Right now, people are dying of starvation everywhere in Tubo. I don't believe that when the emperor stockpiled grain, he didn't tell them that the first thing to do in Tubo was stockpiling grain. After all, in this era, whoever controls food has the right to live. For example, I have food in Pyrolite Mountain, but I don't want to pay for it. What should I do? I'll take food and work instead. That's why there are thousands of people marching forward together. What is this? This was based on the philosophy of survival. What gave them hope was that after the construction was completed, their children would be able to see their descendants studying in this academy. What was this? This is hope. If the same principle is used in Tubo now, what do you think they will do? Li Shimin did know that food was precious now. Even in the Tang dynasty, he knew that there were people who used their children or an acre of land in exchange for a bucket of rice. The same principle had happened countless times in the Tang dynasty and even before that. Many people were familiar with it, let alone those from the house of High Duke. How could they not know this? That was impossible. Li Shimin couldn't help but find out that even if they didn't send a single soldier, as long as these 3,000 people seized this opportunity, then in a few years, more than half of Tubo's actual control would be in the hands of the Tang dynasty. Li Shimin exclaimed in shock that it was impossible. Fengzi, how did you do it? Now that I've combined everything that you've said and everything that happened before, I finally understood this matter. How did you do it? If that's the case, then wouldn't your majesty not need to expend a single soldier? In just a few years, Tibet will naturally become the land of my great Tang? Zhang Feng smiled contemptuously. With your brain you only know how to do small business. Do you know why I let your son come to the academy? Although Li Shimin was despised, he also admitted that Zhang Feng's plan was vicious. This was the most vicious plan to exterminate a family. Although he knew that Zhang Feng wanted to exterminate his family, Li Shimin couldn't help but tremble after thinking it through. Whoever dared to be targeted by this guy was simply... Li Shimin started to sympathize with Tubo. However, Li Shimin still asked curiously, Fengzi, what you're saying now seems to be somewhat different from the national policy you mentioned before. It seems to be a bit like the shadow of the Zhuge Testament? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin in surprise and said, Oh, I couldn't tell. When did Lao Li start to study military books? Li Shimin realized that he had let the cat out of the bag. He laughed and said, Didn't you say that you were going to teach them about heavy cavalry? I had nothing to do, so I read military books. Zhang Feng nodded and then shook his head. That's right, this is indeed a military book. However, what you said is not complete. This is the foundation of White Deer College. Lao Tzu not only wants to teach 9 scholars, but Lao Tzu also wants to cultivate 9 generals. This is the treasure of my college, Military Studies. Chapter 648. What kind of person could think of such a thing? As for what Zhang Feng said about the treasure of the academy, the 9 imperial scholars, and the 9 generals, he automatically ignored it. This kid just liked to show off. But he was not sure. After all, what Zhang Feng said just now was too terrifying. Although he admitted that Zhang Feng was talented, how much could Qing Chumo and the others learn? It would be good if they could learn a little. However, he was still deeply attracted by the magical military science. After all, this thing, if he thought carefully, seemed to be able to be combined with Zhang Feng until now, such as the strategy to deal with the Turkic Tubo and the other countries, as well as the plan to devise strategies. Although it seemed to be national policy, it was very similar to this so-called military science. After that, he talked about the 8 waters, fine salt, and other legendary things. In fact, in the end, it was all about careful observation in life that could be done. However, not a single person was able to see through it. This was a little scary. However, what Li Shimin was most interested in right now was to personally take a look at this so-called military science book. If there was a book, then no matter how much it would cost, he would get it. What was this thing that was locked in the small cabinet? This was the heirloom of the Li family. Li Shimin could not help but pour a bowl of wine for Zhang Feng and hand it to Zhang Feng. This scene made Zhang Feng very suspicious. What? Come, Fengzi, let's drink? Although Zhang Feng was suspicious, he still drank a bowl of wine with Li Shimin. When Zhang Feng was almost finished, Li Shimin rubbed his hands and asked, Fengzi, what is this military science you said? Can you tell me? How could Zhang Feng not know what Li Shimin was holding back? Seeing this, he folded his hands and asked, What? Are you going to change careers and join the army? You're already so old. Even though we're partners in the academy, I still won't accept you. If news of this were to spread out, saying that I, Zhang Feng, accepted a good brother, a good elder brother, to come to the White Deer Academy to learn, wouldn't my backbone be broken? Well, no, I just want to hear it. Isn't it because I have nothing to do after drinking? Let's just take it as a toast. Moreover, giving pointers to the world and drinking together, what a wonderful thing this is. Zhang Feng heard this and felt that it made a little sense. He smacked his lips and pointed to the kitchen. You want to hear it? There is a pot of braised meat on the stove. Go get it, I am brewing it. Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Shimin got up and rushed into the kitchen. If others were to see this scene, they would be scared out of their wits. The emperor was actually in a small tavern, and in a small tavern in Chang, and city at that, being ordered around by a shopkeeper. Anyone who saw this would definitely think that they were dreaming. However, this was not important to Li Shimin. After all, in this small tavern he only treated himself as Zhang Feng's elder brother, a good brother. Furthermore, if anyone were to find out about Zhang Feng's godly skills, not to mention getting him to serve a pot of food, even if he had to empty a chamber pot, there would still be people willing to do so. What was this? What Zhang Feng was going to talk about was a type of military knowledge that had never been mentioned in military books. Not long later, Li Shimin brought out the fine salt bowl and placed it on the table. He even placed a large amount of beer and white wine on the table. Then he sat at the seat closest to Zhang Feng and looked at Zhang Feng. If it weren't for the fact that Zhang Feng's foot was on the stool, he would have wanted to sit beside Zhang Feng. At this moment, Zhang Feng ate a piece of pork intestine and said unhurriedly, "Actually, I have a different set of ideas about military knowledge here. Furthermore, for something to appear in my White Deer College, I can guarantee that this is definitely something that has never been seen before in history. It's like this. Wait, I'll call someone in to record it." When Li Shimin saw that Zhang Feng was about to start nagging again, he hurriedly interrupted Zhang Feng. He rushed to the front of the small tavern and shouted, "Gizi, come quickly." Little Gizi, who was hiding in the dark, trembled. He hurriedly tidied himself up and appeared in the small tavern like a normal person. "Quickly record every word that Brother Zhang Feng says. If you dare to miss a single word, go back and break one of your legs." Little Gizi's face turned pale. He hurriedly called in 3 little eunuchs to help. Then, while Zhang Feng was bragging and talking about this matter, one of them hurriedly recorded the emperor's words while the other 2 recorded Zhang Feng's words. Even so, the 3 of them were drenched in sweat. "Ck this beast. Can't you speak more slowly?" Zhang Feng rambled on for a long time. Li Shimin was also annoyed. However, he didn't dare to interrupt. He could only continuously pour wine into Zhang Feng's mouth. After a quarter of an hour, Zhang Feng finally spoke eloquently about modern military knowledge and a set of ideas about military training. When Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Shimin was completely dumbfounded. In his mind, there was only one sentence that kept repeating over and over again. Heavens! Soldiers can be trained like this? If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the things we learned before are all dog's hit? Chapter 649. 2 hours later. After telling the story, Zhang Feng was finally knocked to the ground by Li Shimin's beer. Looking at Zhang Feng, who was sleeping and snoring, Xiao Tianyu waved his hand. Li Shimin waved his hand in shock. In an instant, 2 maids disguised as maids appeared at the door. They hurriedly helped Zhang Feng to the backyard to wash up. If Zhang Feng was sober, he would never dare to fall asleep. No matter how drunk he was, he had to hold on. After all, how could the maids who could follow Li Shimin and serve Li Shimin be ugly? Moreover, 2 of them were serving him in the bath. This was simply, however, this was not important. Li Shimin looked at the information recorded on the thick sheets of paper in his hand, and his hands could not help trembling. Good, Gizi, you did well. You 2 did well too. Come and reward these 2 eunuchs." As Li Shimin spoke, the Jinwu guards hurriedly appeared and broke the necks of the 2 eunuchs who were kneeling on the ground to express their gratitude. Little Gizi seemed to have been aware of this, or he seemed to be used to it. After all, what was this about? This was a big secret. If someone with ulterior motives had the information in Li Shimin's hands, then the Tang dynasty would be in danger. Li Shimin absolutely did not want to see this happen. Little Gizi knew. After dealing with the 2 eunuchs, Li Shimin turned to look at Zhang Feng, who was being washed by 2 maids in a big pot with a burning fire, and said lightly, "Today, you 2 stay and serve him well." After that, Li Shimin hurriedly left. After all, he always felt that holding such a thing in his hand was as heavy as Mount Tai. When he walked out of the tavern, Li Shimin let out a deep breath. He plunged into the palanquin that had arrived in a hurry and left. Little Gizi stared deeply at Zhang Feng with a complicated expression. "Brat, you're really lucky to be able to get the emperor's favor." Xiao Gizi was Li Shimin's personal servant. He naturally knew how important Zhang Feng was to Li Shimin. Moreover, in Xiao Gizi's opinion, the emperor was always alone, especially after the incident at the Xuanwu Gate. The emperor became even more lonely. He was even a little depressed. After that, the emperor went through the Wei River Alliance, which was the last straw that broke Li Shimin's back. However, these were all things before Zhang Feng appeared. After Zhang Feng's appearance, not to mention the emperor, the current Chang'an city, and even the entire Tang dynasty became vigorous and different. For example, the previous Tang dynasty was like an old man covered in scars. After Zhang Feng's appearance, the whole thing changed. Although Xiao Gizi couldn't say anything, he always felt that everything in the world was in the emperor's hands. Xiao Gizi gently closed the door of Zhang Feng's tavern, told a Jinwu guard to guard Zhang Feng all night, and hurriedly followed Li Shimin's palanquin. In the palanquin, Li Shimin looked at the things in his hands again and again, as if he wanted to engrave every word Zhang Feng said in his mind. He was born in the army. For the first 12 years he was the Prince of Qin, the young masterly that everyone envied. Since the Taiyuan rebellion, he had become the Prince of Qin that everyone feared. Could be said that he spent the first 10 years of his life studying all kinds of ancient books. Then, for the next 10 years he spent his days on horseback killing people or studying military books. It was only after the Black Tortoise Gate that he truly became an emperor. However, he still had the temperament of a soldier in his bones. He knew all the training methods in the army like the back of his hand. But what did he see today? He actually saw a military training concept that he had never seen before. Cold resistance, diving ability, running with weights, rapid marching, lying on wooden stakes, and so on. What were these? Although it seemed to be useless in a military camp, in his impression didn't soldiers train and fight on the drill ground? However, in Zhang Feng's military training book, he faintly felt that fighting was secondary. The most important thing was the arrangement of the formation, the overall combat ability of the team, and the individual ability. Although these seemed a little strange, after Li Shiming thought about it carefully, he was shocked to find that if he used 100 soldiers to train according to this method, they would not be able to do much. At that time they would not need any formations. They would only need to use the formations that they had trained to cooperate with, and they would be able to charge and kill 1,000 top-notch veterans. The result would be a complete victory for these 100 people. Li Shimin couldn't help but be aghast. There weren't many soldiers who had fought. If he counted all the soldiers in his mind, there would be at most 300,000 soldiers. Moreover, they were spread all over the north, Yuzhou, Longyu, and other places. If all the people in the military camps learned this thing, then he would. Li Shimin didn't dare to think about it. He was shocked to discover that if those 100,000 soldiers were trained according to Zhang Feng's training method, they would only need 3 months of hard work. 300,000 soldiers could be used as 800,000 or even 1 million soldiers. Moreover, what was more terrifying was that Zhang Feng hadn't mentioned his impenetrable shield and his invincible spear. If he added these then. Chapter 650. Old hey, can you King hurry up? You're dawdling like a girl. The next morning. In Qing Yaojin's residence, Yu Qigong's loud voice reverberated in the huge duke's residence, causing all the servants and servants to tremble in fear. In the courtyard, Yu Qigong, Qin Xiong and Qin Shubao, who had changed into casual attire, were waiting anxiously like a black tower. Ever since they found out about Zhang Feng's incident 2 days ago, their hearts had already flown to Zhang Feng's little tavern. However, because of Tubo's incident, they did not dare to be careless. They could only suppress the restlessness in their hearts and wait. However, this wait was unbearable. During this period they had also inquired about Zhang Feng. When they found out that the miraculous porridge with bone-strengthening powder and chicken, duck and pig's gizzard was made by Zhang Feng, how could they sit still? Behind them, there were tens of thousands of brothers who were starving. How could such a good thing be given to the damned commoners and let the soldiers starve? That was why after the morning court meeting ended, the two of them couldn't wait to carry Qing Yaojin all the way back to the duke's public house. The moment they entered, they took off their official robes and pointed at two Qing Yaojin who were about the same size as them and helped them change into their robes. After dressing up like this, Yu Qigong, who was already ferocious and had a face full of curly beard, really looked like a nouveau riche. It was just that he looked like a bandit who made a fortune. Qin Xiong was slightly better. After all, he was born handsome. Although he was old and wore a military uniform all year round, when he put on the brocade robes, he instantly looked like a businessman. Amidst Yu Qigong's angry shouts and curses, Qing Yaojin dawdled out of the room. He patted the brand new jade belt on his big belly and reluctantly stretched. "Let's go. You're so impatient. I've already said that this kid is still sleeping. You don't believe me? Let's go eat the northwest wind." Just like that, the three of them were too lazy to even ride horses. After all, those things were too ostentatious. Just like that, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong continued on their way, cursing and swearing. The shocked crowd was forced to retreat, thinking that bandits had entered the city. Although it was still early in the morning, The morning market of Chang and city was still bustling with activity. However, there were many people selling, and as for the people buying, there were basically not many people. The Guangzhong people had a bad habit. He didn't know where it came from. Early in the morning, he would carry a teapot or a bird cage and wander around the streets. When he met an acquaintance, he would brag about it and then walk away. Although their stomachs were growling from hunger, they still couldn't get rid of their bad habit of wandering around. When Yu Qigong's extraordinary height appeared on the street, he instantly attracted everyone's attention. However, when they looked at Yu Qigong's curly beard, which still had traces of grease on it, coupled with his ferocious appearance, the entire street instantly fell silent. The three of them didn't seem to be surprised. Each of them was holding a large handful of roasted chicken legs, and several bamboo beer cans were hanging from their shoulders with hemp ropes. While eating, they bragged about what had happened beyond the Great Wall. When the three of them walked to the small tavern, they touched their stomachs and their faces were very red. Qing Yaojin pointed at Zhang Feng's closed door and said, "See, I told you that this kid doesn't get up until noon. Even if he gets up, it's because he has to urinate. You didn't believe me? Let's go, let's find a jar of fermented glutinous rice to moisten our throats. There was a damn dumpling stall here before." When Yu Qigong heard that there was dumpling, he touched his huge belly and looked around. "Where is it? Lao Tzu hasn't eaten dumplings in Chang, and for a long time." Qing Yaojin broke a branch to pick his teeth and said, "He went to Xingshan Academy with this kid. I heard that he's learning something about mathematics from the kid from the Du family." Yu Qigong stared. "How is that possible? Did all the people in Tong Hui Fang go there?" Along the way, only this Tong Hui Fang was special. What was different? It was just that on the road, there wasn't even a damn barbecue stall, not to mention people strolling around. Now Yu Qigong finally understood what was going on here. It turned out that they had all gone up the mountain to eat some kind of porridge. The three of them had just drunk a lot of beer and squatted on the road for a while. Instantly, their expressions became unnatural. They looked around, trying to find a place to pee, but there was no place. In the end, under Qing Yaojin's horrified gaze, this silly guy directly kicked Zhang Feng's door to pieces. And in the midst of this loud noise, the Jinwu guards who had stayed behind to protect Zhang Feng hurriedly jumped out. But when they saw that it was Yu Qigong, they were so scared that their legs trembled. They hurriedly bowed and gestured for him to leave. Then they hurriedly ran away. Zhang Feng, who was sleeping soundly, thought that there was an earthquake when he heard this loud noise. He was stunned and hurriedly ran out. But in front of him, he saw a black wall rushing towards him. "Kit, where's the outhouse?" When Yu Qigong saw a disheveled teenager running out as soon as he entered the door, he only thought that he was a waiter. He picked up Zhang Feng like he was picking up a chick and asked. Zhang Feng was stunned. Pointing at the backyard behind him, Yu Qigong let go and Zhang Feng instantly fell on his butt. At this time, while Zhang Feng's face was full of question marks, Qing Yaojin walked in with an awkward expression. Zhang Feng pointed at the person behind him and asked, "Old Qin, who's this silly guy?" Chapter 651. Zhang Feng was completely dumbfounded. He was sleeping in his own house. Not only was the door smashed, but he was also lifted up and asked about the bathroom. "Damn you. Is that all? It's so early in the morning? Can't you solve the problem outside the door? Why are you so anxious? F***ck your second uncle." Qing Yaojin was known for his thick skin, but at this time he couldn't help but blush. "Well, Fengzi this. Well, you can call him Old Yu. Oh, by the way, let me introduce you. This is Old Qin." How could Zhang Feng care about this now? His mind was full of that silly girl. He couldn't help but feel angry now. He casually greeted the two of them, then hurriedly went into the bedroom, ready to put on the clothes of the great Confucian and come out to show off. Qin Xiong was also a little dumbfounded. Seeing Zhang Feng enter the bedroom, he pointed at Zhang Feng and asked, "The person you were talking about, is he?" Qing Yaojin was speechless. He looked at Qin Xiong and said, "What do you think?" This time, Qin Xiong was also speechless. "Let's not talk about this for the time being. Let's talk about Zhang Feng. After being drunk by Old Li yesterday, he didn't know what was going on. Just now he heard a loud noise and walked out of the door in a daze. Then he met such an idiot. Now he didn't feel sleepy at all. When he returned to the bedroom again, he was completely stunned. He saw two beautiful women standing in front of his bed. Although the two of them were wearing servant girls' dresses, they still couldn't hide their graceful figures and their charming faces. Although the Tang dynasty advocated the beauty of plump bodies, it was all because they didn't have enough to eat before. Therefore, in order to show the wealth of the Tang dynasty, Li Shimin said that plump bodies were beautiful and let the world see the wealth of the Tang dynasty. It was all because of this year's locust plague that they started to take shape. But now, because of Zhang Feng's appearance, Li Shimin seemed to have forgotten about the beauty of plump breasts. After all, who would like a fatty? There was no one. Looking at these two women, although they couldn't compare with Jingshu or Zhang Yuyao, they were still rare beauties. But why would these two women appear in his room? What was going on? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. When the two women saw Zhang Feng looking at them in a daze, they couldn't help but lower their cheeks and perform the palace etiquette. Servant little Yao and Yao Hong greet Prince Zhang. About that, I want to ask, where am I? What have I done before? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded and completely at a loss. The two women wanted to laugh, but they also understood the importance of this person in the emperor's heart. One of them was called Tao Hong. Her face was very round, and he didn't know whether her cheeks were painted with rouge or were naturally red. Anyone who looked at her would want to pinch her cheeks. At this time, Tao Hong said, Prince Zhang was drunk yesterday, so I and Master asked us to stay and serve Prince Zhang. Damn it. Zhang Feng naturally understood what it meant to serve. He hurriedly lifted the quilt subconsciously and saw that the bed sheet was still gray as before. Only then did he breathe a deep sigh of relief, but he also sighed a little. Didn't they say that if the people of the Tang dynasty were served by maids, it meant, Mother Ker, all these history books and novels are King liars. Under the strange eyes of the two women, Zhang Feng sat on the bed and said embarrassedly, Well, do you want to stay? Or go back? Of course we want to go back. Tao Hong pursed her lips, held back her laughter, and said, Of course, if young master wants us to stay and serve you, my master will also agree. There was such a good thing? Brother, Zhang Feng was originally very excited, but when he thought of Chintinyu and the other idiots, although he really wanted the two women to stay, he forced himself to pretend to be a gentleman and said reluctantly, I don't need you for the time being. If I need you, I will ask Laoli for you too. When Tao Hong and little Yao heard this, a touch of disappointment flashed in their eyes, but they recovered in a flash. After all, to be able to stand out among so many maids in the palace, they naturally had some ability to serve Li Shimin. The two women bowed again and were ready to leave, but Zhang Feng stopped them. Well, I don't know how to wear this robe. Can you help me put it on? Okay, Prince Zhang. When the two women heard this, they covered their mouths and chuckled, then picked up the neatly folded robe. However, when the two women shook the robe, their faces changed dramatically. They had naturally seen the robe of the great scholar. At this time, seeing it again and it was in Zhang Feng's place, the two women couldn't help but be deeply shocked. However, the two women didn't say anything. They just let Zhang Feng do a good job, combed Zhang Feng's long hair and changed his clothes. Zhang Feng just sat there and let the two women serve him. Except for the cloth in his crotch, they changed everything for him. At this time, Zhang Feng also realized that his original cloth in his crotch was gone, and the one he was wearing now was the one he was going to throw away before. Could it be? Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something and pointed to his chest. What happened to my clothes? Replying to Prince Zhang, you were drunk yesterday, and my master asked us to help you take a bath. Although Zhang Feng's skin was extremely thick, he couldn't help but blush when he heard it. Originally, he wanted to experience the feeling of a rich family. He didn't expect that this was really embarrassing.